We're proud to bring you this live presentation on Racer TV of the 50th anniversary of the Progressive Grand National Cross Country Series, presented by Specialized, an AMA National Championship. 50 years of world premier off-road racing. 50 years of battling the gnarliest woods racing on the planet. It's time to start a new chapter. The next 50 years starts now.
GNCC is back on RacerTV.com, the sands of Florida, the 50th season of GNCC. It's going to be historical. It's already been historical. An XC2 podium sweep. Are you kidding me? Will it play out today the same way? Will XC1 rebound and get to the top of the box? It all starts right now on RacerTV.com. Are you ready to go GNCC Racing? Craig DeLong, Johnny Gerard, mano y mano.
I think if Johnny can maybe send it around the outside like he's trying to do there.
Look at that. That is a full XC1.
Is this a NASCAR race?
Absolutely a sensational. When things get tough, look out for Jordan Ashburn.
Racing dirt bikes, it's a lifestyle. It's something where every single choice you make sets you on the path to how you're going to succeed or perform. You live this every second of the day.
Stu hauling the mail.
Stu is one of the most gritty riders out there.
Never give up. Wise words from Stu Baylor. Up and in and swimming with the Sharks right now is Liam Draper, and he's leading the pack.
There is Gerard. Johnny Gerard, he has been stellar. Most wins on the season out of anybody.
Johnny Gerard, the champion!
Nick Defo also has a 50-some-odd second advantage. He is nearing upwards of a minute and a half in the lead.
Are you kidding me? T-Rex, the 246. Nick DeFeo, you're going down in the GNCC history books, man.
I just like riding my dirt bike. 3 hours is a long time. 3 hours of racing is gnarly.
I know I can show up and I know I can win on any given week.
50 years of GNCC racing here in 2025. It is set up to be a historical season, Johnny, and there is no doubt about it. We started the 2025 season in historic fashion, the first ever XC2 overall podium sweep. Not one, not two. All three positions went to the XC2.
Yeah, I mean, the top three overall, all XC2 riders, and doing it in a new way, too. Obviously, we had seen Josh Toth early last year take the first ever overall win from that XC2 row. Grant Davis doing it 2 times later in the year. The difference being, those guys did that on corrected time. Obviously, from the time that second row XC2 starts, they subtract the amount of time they start behind the XC1 riders from their elapsed time at the end of the race. When those races ended, Josh Toth and twice Grant Davis were able to finish the race in less elapsed time than the XC1 riders who actually finished in front of them. But they never physically passed every single one of the XC1 racers. It never happened until 2 weeks ago at Big Buck, where Nick DeFeo came all the way from that second row, not only running a faster race, but physically catching, passing, and pulling away from the entire XC1 field.
A near-perfect ride, and, well, we actually had a chance to catch up with the man himself, T-Rex Nick DeFeo.
It was great to get my first overall, and it was only my third race in XC2. It's a good feeling to have, to be the first one to physically get the overall win, and by a good margin too, which adds on to it a little bit. I didn't really think I had it in the bag. I was just out there riding. I'm like, I told myself I can start celebrating like with 2 corners to go, because if my bike breaks, then I can still push it to the finish. I passed for the overall lead in lap 3, and then I just rode my own race, and I didn't really think anybody was in front of me, or I was just out there riding and rode my own race.
Well, Johnny, Nick, I love Nick. A great rider. Nick, you got to work on the interview skills, but he's getting better. He's certainly getting better. And I'm sure he's thinking to himself, I don't care. I'm getting wins. That's all that matters.
The reality of it is, if the kid keeps riding the way that he is going to have a lot more opportunities to practice those interview skills. And they pay him to ride dirt bikes.
That's exactly it.
And he did his job.
That's right. He did his job, and he's been doing his job for a number of years. You go back to 2020, the YXC2 Super Mini Class champion. The one not mentioned, 2021, he was, I believe, second place in that YXC1 class behind
Cole Forbes.
That's 2 weeks in a row. Cole Forbes. So is sensational year that year. And then he finally gets that youth championship in 22. And then overall amateur 23. Overall amateur in 24 as well, Johnny. That's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, the kid he's been on the path to the top. And I think everyone expected him to get to that point where he'd be competing for overall podiums and wins. I don't know that anybody expected it in his third ever XC2 race, but he set a pretty high standard, and now he's going to have to work pretty hard to back it up.
Another impressive ride, Josh Toth. We talked a little bit about him, Johnny. He was the first guy to line up in the XC2 in Georgia, pick up that overall win. He's been with us, and if you've been around GNCC for a number of years, he was on the KTM. He has an XC2 championship. He used to battle with the guys in the XC1. Then he stepped away from the factory team. He stepped away from racing a full GNCC schedule. Kind of had that hybrid Ryan Sipes schedule, but we had a chance to catch up with Josh as well.
Yeah, it was a wild day at Big Buck. Kind of a weird day. Just everyone looked the same, covered in mud, so it was hard to tell where I was at, and just rode my own race and had some challenges along the way, but just picked my way through and just kept steady, and came through in second overall. It was kind of a shock to me, so it was good. No, it was really cool to see all the XC2 guys up there riding. Whether it's a 250 track we were on, but I think a lot has to do with the conditions, how the first guys didn't keep a great pace at the beginning, and the top 3 or 4 of us caught the back of the pack really quick, and were able to just ride our own race. Everyone lined up and had an equal shot, so it's super cool to see these guys. So the competition's tough, obviously. If I want to win XC2, I gotta win the overall, I guess.
Johnny, he made a good point right there at the end. I guess if I'm going to win the XC2, I got to win the overall. Maybe a little side jab at the XC1 guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of swagger on that XC2 row lining up today, and rightly so. They proved it at round 1, but those guys on the front row are heavy hitters for a reason, and if guys keep throwing jabs, I think there's going to be some punches thrown back. But right now, those top 3, obviously we've already heard from Nick Defo, Josh Toth, both now former overall winners from that XC2 class. They can hold their own, that's for sure.
They absolutely can. Another guy, and we heard Toth allude to this a little bit about the XC1 guys, to their credit, setting that pace early, setting the lines. We had a chance to catch up with Angus Reardon, who had some more insights on that.
Yeah, us XC2 boys are sort of getting up in the mix with the XC1 guys. I've said it again, I'll say it before. We get the good hand dealt with us. The XC1 guys, they go out there first and they are dealing with all the lines and everything. They're putting in the lines for us, and we've just got to come up in behind. It's obviously harder than what I'm making it sound like, but they do the hard yards and we just get sucked in along. And once we catch them, say we start a minute behind, if we catch them, we don't need to pass them or whatever. We can just stay there and we beat them because it's on corrected time. So that's when you get a good start, you push up to the front and then you sort of just get sucked along. First lap, ideally, get a start, get out front and get a bit of a gap, and then get yourself in with the XC1 guys and pass a few, and then say you get into 5th overall and the other XC2 guys are still in 10th. They've got to put a lot more effort into passing those guys later on in the race. So if you can get up front a bit earlier, you just get sucked along, where they've got to put more effort into passing.
Well, Gus Reardon kind of laying it out there for everybody as far as they put in the work too. There's no doubt about that. I'm glad he said that. But boy, the Young Bucks, they have been giving it to the XC1 class this year. But this weekend, we have the Sands of Florida. The track is also going to be giving it to these guys. And for that, we have a Yamaha Racing track description. We'll throw it to Jackson Burrell, who stands by with Jared Bolton.
All right, thanks, guys. I'm down here at the FMF PowerPoint with our trail boss, Mr. Jared Bolton. Jared, take us through what we're going to be seeing here today.
Oh, man, the Wild Boar is a beautiful awesome event. I say it every week, a little bit of something for everybody. But that really holds true here at the Wild Boar. The old school Florida races were wide open across the flats. It was unique racing, very fast, but when we came here to Wild Boar, things really tightened up. There's a lot more thick woods here, a lot more flowy trails, tight in places for the quads. It makes it medium speed for the motorcycles. Flows really well, and then we've got some tight stuff for the motorcycles as well. You see the PowerPoint, nice wide open area, but that's only a little bit of the racetrack. Once you get back in those thick woods, it's tight, twisty, and again, a little bit of something for everybody.
Hey, speaking of unique trails, we've got a unique trail right here at the FMF PowerPoint. We got a split lane on each side. Jared, take us through what that's about.
Yeah, so try to give some opportunities for some passing here. You get out in these open areas, do something a little bit different. So we've got these nice rollers here, kind of evened out, split lane deal. I'm gonna say there is one side that may be a little bit better in my opinion. But by and far, it's going to be even, and that's going to make some really awesome racing as this thing goes on. And it's good because as the things get rough, hey, next lap around, you just change your lane and go to a different spot.
Hey, speaking of being rough, the thing that's making it rough is this sand right here. Take us through some of the different types of sand we'll be seeing this weekend.
Yeah, so obviously the open stuff gets that sugary, powdery sand. It sits out, bakes in the sun. The woods holds a little bit of moisture. Really good sand in the woods. It still gets rough, but it's not like this open stuff. And then actually we've got the black mud out back and some little bit harder sand on some of the other pieces of property. So it's a unique mix here, and I think that's probably why people love riding here so much.
All right, guys. Well, there's a glimpse of the track from the trail boss himself, Mr. Jared Bolton. Back to you guys.
All right, well, there you have it, folks. Right from one of our trail bosses, Jared Bolton. A little bit of something for everybody, a lot of different terrain here today. That was our Yamaha Racing track description. We'll be back with our starts. We're going to let our man Mikey Waynes head down, do some 10-second calls. We'll be back with all of the action on Racer TV Live after word from our sponsors.
Everywhere but the seat. The seat is leather.
Alan, we get it. You love your bike. We do too.
That's why we're America's #1 motorcycle insurer.
But do you have to wedge it into everything?
What? Don't do that. This reminds me of my bike. The wolf was about the size of my new motorcycle. Have you seen it, by the way? Happy birthday, Grandma!
Really?
Look how the brushstrokes follow the line of the gas tank.
Hey!
Hey! Brought my +1. Jamie.
Every generation believes they've invented the best way. With age comes wisdom. We've come to realize that every piece of knowledge is learned, passed down from those generous and patient enough to teach.
Take a look.
Legacy. It's not about leaving something behind to be remembered by. It's realizing that the future lies within the next generation.
Let's call it a night. All right.
The nature of true progress is humbly building something bigger than yourself. Rocky Mountain ATV MC. This is our legacy.
Progressive GNCC Racing is brought to you by Progressive. Progressive could save you hundreds of dollars on your automobile and motorcycle insurance. Specialized E-Turbo bicycles. It's you, only faster. RockyMountainATVMC.com. Get ready. And hello and welcome to everybody watching at home on RacerTV.com as you tune in here to the Moose Off-Road Wild Boar GNCC. We are about to introduce our starting row for the XC1 Pro Class. Big John, you ready? Big John, can you hear me? Oh, Jeremy. That's why Big John's ignoring me. All good, baby. All right, without further ado, your starting row, roll into the line in accordance to points. Roll into the line first, the 5-3-0 out of Connecticut on an FMF Factory Racing KTM, Ben Kelly. Roll into the line next, the 1-7-8 rider out of Australia on that Lyndon Snodgrass Racing, back to Husqvarna, Lyndon Snodgrass. Up next, the number 8 out of North Carolina, riding aboard the Phoenix Racing Honda, Mike Wachowski. Up next, the number 7 from Denver, North Carolina on the Liqui Moly Factory Racing Beta, Josh Stray. Rolling to the line next, the 5-5-7 out of Boonville, North Carolina, riding aboard the Am-Pro Yamaha, Caleb Russell. Up next, the 3-3-6 out of Elkin, North Carolina, on of Icon Services, JDP and Moose Off-Road backed Honda, Ryder Lafferty. Up next, the number 3 out of Livingston, Tennessee, on a Flat Rock Motor Club Factory Racing Gas, Jordan Ashburn. Up next, your defending national champion, the number 1 out of Boonville, North Carolina, riding aboard the FMF Factory Racing KTM, Johnny Gerard. Up next, the 198, riding aboard the Am-Pro Yamaha. Say hello to Liam Draper. Up next, the 3-4-2 out of Waynesburg, Pennsylvania, riding aboard the Rockstar Energy Factory Racing Husqvarna, Craig DeLong. Up next, the 989 out of Williamson, West by God, Virginia, on the Racecraft Racing Team back KTM, Bad Thad Duval. Up next, the 5-1-4 out of Hodges, South Carolina, on the Rocky Mountain Red Bear Racing Team Green Kawasaki, Stu Baylor. And last but certainly not least, the 2-1-2 out of Duval, Washington, on the Enduro Engineering Triumph Racing Ride, the rough and rowdy Ricky Russell. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your starting row for the XC1 Pro Class here this afternoon at the Moose Off-Road Wild Boar GNCC. Round number 2, the Sunshine State. Gonna be a good one. 50 years of racing GNCC. And if you're here with us this weekend, you're a part of history, whatever capacity it is. If you're here spectating, you're here racing, you're here working for the sponsors, the vendors, the staff. A historical year it's already been, and still waiting on a bit of a delay. DJ Judd has exited the mobile entertainment activation transport. Jumps into the Yamaha R-Max 1000, and this is where we like to say, DJ Judd, remove the meats. Make some room for Judd over there. I think he's going to exit right meow. And he is. It's the 5 minutes. Thank you, Ricky. We are now 5 minutes away from going Wild Boar GNCC Racing. Again, 5 minutes away from going Wild Boar GNCC Racing. 5 minutes. So as we think about it, round number 1, we said, hey, 50 years of racing, a historical season. Well, it's already been that. Nick Defo grabbing the win for the XC2, grabbing the overall win, not just on adjusted time, but outright. Absolutely. Oh, light them up. We're ready. We got the okay. Light them up. Light them up. Let's go racing. That's enough talking about it. Let's do it to it. Now we are just about ready. So will the XC2 have the same success here today that we saw a couple of weeks ago in the mud and clay of South Carolina? Ricky Towery now takes a deep breath. He says, here we go, and he steps forward to let our riders know 1 minute. 1 minute until we're ready to go. GNCC Racing, a Landers KTM holeshot award up for grabs as Ricky steps back now, looks down at his watch, keeps his eyes on the time, takes a big deep breath. Or a little breath. There it is. Blue flag waves. Blue flag waves. Shut them down. Shut them down. Shut them down. As we are just about ready to roll now. And I got to ask you, Wild Boar GNCC, are you ready to go GNCC Racing? Oh, that's pretty good, but this is a historical season. The sun is shining. 50 years of GNCC Racing. I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you ready to go GNCC Racing? 10 seconds for row number 1, the XC1 Pro. Bang, and they're off. The number 3 at Jordan Ashburn with a good drive up the inside, and that is going to be enough. Jordan Ashburn, the number 3 on the factory gas, going to grab that Landers KTM holeshot award as our riders shuffle together. Ooh, rough start for the ride of Craig DeLong. We reset the deck. And now the much talked about XC2 class, the XC2 250 Pro class, a whole shot award up for grabs, courtesy of Landers KTM. Blue flag waves, we got them shut down. Angus Reardon, Dominic Morris, Zachary Davidson, Josh Toth, Toby Cleveland, Jason Tino, Brody Johnson, T-Rex, Nick DeFeo, Hunter Bush, Jesse Ansley, as well as Landon Lynn, Michael DeLosa, Jack Walker, all set to go in 10 seconds. Kenneth Held, Grant Davis, Jonathan Johnson, and Cody Barnes. The 226 Jason Tino out in front, gets pushed a little bit wide. But, oh no, it's going to be the 213 Toby Cleveland on the Husqvarna. And a little spill there for Jesse Ansley at the end of that one. Going to have his work cut out for him. As we turn our attention now to row number 3. 10 seconds. XC3 125 Pro-Am. Low Jack Cycle Sales. Whole Shot Award up for grabs. James Simpson, Tyler Shields, Isaiah Brown, Laylee Messer, James Jenkins, Philip Shane. And that's going to be the 813. That is Jason Crawford, Easton Uplander out there, as well as Luke Brown and Felipe Chain. All duking it out. Row number 4, ready to roll. 10 seconds. 250A, Van Adams, Colton Shields, Cooper Jones, Ryan Piper, Gavin Simon, Chase Landers, Collier Martinez, Will Steven Piper, Joe Cunningham, coming up a top 5-0A. And gonna get edged out right there by Simon. On the whole shot, but JoJo in the mix. Here we go. Wait on the signal here from Ricky Towery. 10 seconds. Open A, Kenton Coleman, TJ Brown, Ty Ely, Dylan T. De La Cruz, Dennis LeBlanc, Trevor Hewlin, Jeremy Lanther, Jose Mercado, Caleb Slagle, Ranger Emmons, Zach Tussle, Zach Hayes. Whole shot 450 on the helmet. That's going to be Zach Hayes on cue right there out of Sumter, South Carolina. on that Carolina XC backstride. The 4:28, a little bit of time to make up there early. 4-stroke A lights. 10 seconds. Joshua Connor, Logan Pellegrini, Brady Bierbaum, Ryan Amancio, Bryce Woodrum, Brandon Baisley, Tucker Kenry, Rivers Morris, Ty Atkinson, Caleb Johnson, Keegan Needler, Roger Morgan, Lane Smith, Dominic Goff. Oh, that was close, man, but I think Smith was able to grab that one. I believe that was Lane Smith with the hole shot, but being challenged early. Vet A, 30 plus. 10 seconds. Robbie Norwood, Douglas Randolph, Eric Timberlake, Max Freeze, Joshua Watson, Mark Carrasco Jr., Danny Hoff, Jacob Patterson, grabbing a hole shot. 8. Man, was that the... I couldn't tell if it was an 8 or a 3. I might need contacts. It's been a long week, Big John. 150A, ready to roll. 10 seconds. Michael Meyer, Lucas Rubenstein, Colby Goodman, Jack Whalen, Davin Scheich, David Johnson, Caleb Lane, Jake Mitchell, Kyle Granowitz, Bodie Wallner, Cade Stats, and Bentley McGraw. Through the first turn we go. Oh, good side-by-side battle, but that's going to go to the 098 of Lucas Rubenstein out of Winsville, Missouri. Getting it done in the sands of Florida. Junior A, 25 plus. 10 seconds. Russell Smith, Chance Malin, Joey Crown, Shane Wicker, Ian Cerveroli, Christopher Fisher, Caleb Hagan, Aaron Higgins, Peyton Harden, Andrew Boggs, and Braden Moore. 255 on the machine. I think that might have been the 255 on the helmet. Sure enough, that's Russell Smith on that Tri-State Power Sports back Husqvarna, getting it done early. 10 seconds. Senior A, 40 plus. Frank Messina, Pete Petrucci, Fernando Pino, Andy Shea, Joe Marsh, Philip Megaloff, Miguelis Gomez, Scott Hopper, Miss Leno Batista, Jesse Arsenault, and the 376 of Barry McCarty out of Port Orange, Florida, on the Husqvarna, leading the way through the hole shot in the home state. How about it? 10 seconds. Open B, Chris Gates, Nate Garrison, Blake Freiberger, Mark Cole, Carson Thurlman, Landon Phillips, Tyler Mumford, Keegan Storms, Evan Moyer, Austin Brunny, Davey Souza, Dylan Fleming, Colton Painter, Austin Scherer, Jamison Bulliard, Luke Thurfield, and the 902, that's going to be Logan Rediger out of Bushnell, Florida, on an Ori's bike and repair, and Shoals MX backstride. 250B. 10 seconds. Devin Moore, Chase Setzler, Kevin Paquin, Dylan McDonald, Brandon Bailey, Robbie Webb, Michael Sturek, Mason Sakanikas, and Zachary Brazow. Good three-way battle up front. And the man out in front now through the hole shot is going to be the 721 of Zachary Brazow. Grabbing that hole shot right there. 150B. 10 seconds. Nico Presutti, Levi Wilkins, Owen Mock, Isaac Leitner, and Joshua Ippolito. Buzz. Oh, look at that. 87. Right up the inside. Has to check up, but able to carry that momentum through the turn. And that's going to be the 386 on the helmet. That's Levi Wilkins out of Pride, Louisiana, on the gas. Four-stroke B-lights. 10 seconds. Devin Starnes, Devin Page, Justin Young, Carlo Cleary, Tucker McCrary, Matt Gray, Maddox Moretz, Ethan Ford, Joseph Sheelot, Owen James, Braden Slade, Kid Norris, Christopher Snyder, Ethan Fitzgerald, Colin Eberhardt, Preston Horton, and the whole shot's going to go to the 334 of Carlo Clary out on that Podium Works back to gas out of Pennsylvania. A couple riders getting tangled up. Back up on two wheels and rolling. Senior B, 40 plus. 10 10 seconds. Larry Hopper, Brendan Hagan, Braden Black, Aaron McAfee, Nathan Welch, Aldo Nunez, Igor Soares, Leon Whitaver, Albert Spicer, Morris Chrysler, Chris Hart, Nick Frady, and Louis Danielle Pita Abero. And grabbing that whole shot's going to be the 882. That's Nick Frady out of Mount Airy, Georgia. On the Husqvarna, leading the way early. Junior B, 25 plus 10 seconds. Riley Stolenbarger, Dustin Cotto, Ty Wingfield, Zach Weaver, Tristan Jenkins, Walker Hashman, and Billy Saliga. Look at that. 822 out in front. Checks up just a bit. Little dab right there. And puts a little hot sauce on it. That's going to be the 828 on the helmet. That's Walker Hashman. Getting it done. That B 30 plus 10 seconds. Ricky Stanley, Matt Obashan, Justin Evans, Matthew Costel, Jean Felipe Turgeon, Joseph Ward, Jonathan Bottomy, Cody Johnson, Marcus Slade, Devin Hall, Jesse Fulmer, Enrique Barbosa, David Espinosa, Benjamin Lawton, and grabbing that whole shot was a 385. That's Joseph Ward out of Morgantown, West by God, Virginia. Mercy sakes alive, what a start. We're off and rolling for the Moose Off-Road Wild Boar GNCC. Jordan Ashburn grabbing the Landers KTM whole shot and early lead. Will it stay that way very long? Stick around. We're going to get in a word from our sponsors and be back with more GNCC here on Racer TV.
Everywhere but the seat. The seat is leather.
Alan, we get it. You love your bike. We do too.
That's why we're America's #1 motorcycle insurer.
But do you have to wedge it into everything?
What? I don't do that. This reminds me of my bike. The Wolf was about the size of my new motorcycle. Have you seen it, by the way? Happy birthday, Grandma!
Really?
Look how the brushstrokes follow the line of the gas tank.
Hey!
Hey! Brought my +1. Jamie.
Every generation believes they've invented the best way. With age comes wisdom. We've come to realize that every piece of knowledge is learned, passed down from those generous and patient enough to teach.
Take a look.
Legacy. It's not about leaving something behind to be remembered by. It's realizing that the future lies within the next generation.
Let's call it a night. All right.
The nature of true progress is humbly building something bigger than yourself. Rocky Mountain ATV MC. This is our legacy.
Whatever you drive, however you drive. AMSOIL specially engineers lubricants to maximize power, performance, and protection in your vehicles, so you can work hard and play hard with confidence. Order online at amsoil.com.
Progressive GNCC Racing is brought to you by Progressive. Progressive could save you hundreds of dollars on your automobile and motorcycle insurance. Specialized e-turbo bicycles. It's you, only faster. RockyMountainATVMC.com. Get ready.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 50th Annual Progressive Insurance Grand National Cross Country Racing Series. This is round 2 of the 2025 season, the Moose Racing Wild Boar GNCC. My name is Jackson Burrell. I'll be alongside Zach Heron and Johnny G to bring you guys today's action. Zach, it is good to be here in Palatka, Florida.
Man, it is always so nice. We were just talking off camera. The sun is shining. We're feeling good. We're in T-shirts. This is my kind of weather, but man, this racing out here is brutal. You take a quick look at your Yamaha Racing live drone as we get a glimpse of your leaders on screen. We have got 3 hours of brutal conditions in store. Let's get ready to show you exactly how things got started with our specialized start recap. And man, we were standing on top of the quad trying to catch a glimpse of it. The start, so important in conditions like this because it is going to be a long 3 hours. There's no such thing as an easy GNCC, but this is one of the ones that the riders have circled on the calendar knowing physically it is so demanding. Look at the drive from Jordan Ashburn up the inside. And man, that was a beautiful start, textbook if you will. The number 8 of Mike Wachowski funneled into the number 2 spot. Looked like Ben Kelly was going to try to make a move, but gets the door slammed on him by Mike Wachowski. And then how about it? Caleb Russell makes some quick moves around that second corner, moves himself into the number 3 spot with Lyndon Snodgrass once again putting himself up front early on the Husqvarna machine. Now your XC2 250 class. It was a drag race into turn number 1. Jason Tino also aboard that gas led them into turn 1, but Toby Cleveland, tucks it to the inside and takes the whole shot award. A couple of riders getting banged up there on the inside, getting caught up, and you can see how hard these riders are pushing these first couple corners. Watch Grant Davis around the outside, leaves it wide open, and slides his way into the number 2 position. Incredible start from those riders. Cleveland, Tino, and Davis headed into the woods. The 125, FMF 125 class, XC3 into turn 1 they go, and it will be Jason Crawford grabbing the whole shot aboard that 813. The battle was on, though, between the 217 and the 269, the 2 KTMs juking back and forth. You can see these riders trying to funnel to those insides around the hay bales, but man, if that is the tip of an iceberg for what we've got over the next 3 hours, we're in for a treat. Now, here is what we've missed so far in the race. Take a look who that is out front. I think his name's Caleb Russell. We might have heard of him. Man, he is looking comfortable. Looks like Jordan Ashburn in the number 2 spot. Lyndon Snodgrass in the 3 position, and I believe that is Ben Kelly in 4 with Mike Wachowski. Now in the 5th place spot, we welcome Johnny Gallagher to the booth with us. Johnny, no surprise, Caleb Russell, we know he likes training in the sand, and he's putting it to good use right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he got off to about a mid-pack start there, made some moves through the first 2 turns, and was able to get out front. And if you're an 8-time GNCC champion, you know, you're going to try to put some pressure on these guys. He's starting basically to try to string out the pack, and that was actually Lyndon Snodgrass in 3rd, and that was Johnny Gerard in 4th. Ben Kelly a little bit further back there. You see him on screen back in about that 8th place position. Then Liam Draper, looked like Ryder Lafferty working his way through. So we're now to what we're looking at live. And from the Yamaha Racing live drone, does look like it is still the 557 of Caleb Russell out front on that Ampro Yamaha, with Mike Wachowski giving chase and Johnny Gerard on that big number 1 FMF KTM sitting there in the number 3 spot. And again, the rest of the XC1 class very much in tow behind them. One of the interesting things I think we saw with those starts there, boys, we saw a lot of riders getting pretty dicey for what we know is going to be an endurance race. I mean, all GNCC races are very much an endurance race. They're 3 hours long. It's 180 minutes of suffering. But this one, more so than any other, it really takes everything these guys have just to finish, let alone be in contention for a podium or a win. So to see these guys this jumpy, racy, feisty early on tells me that they're expecting someone to try to break that pace open early. They don't want to get left behind. They're not willing to pace themselves this early. They want to see how the race shapes up. They want to be able to see the front of the pack.
Without a doubt, Johnny. And like you said, not only is this round one of the most physically demanding, but Jackson, this is one of the quickest turnarounds between rounds 2 and 3. Only 1 week between this and our first ever round out at Talladega. So I think Johnny hit the nail on the head. There is something in the water right now. These riders are planning to hit the ground running early, and man, this is cool, Jackson. We didn't think we'd ever see this. Caleb Russell on course, leading the way in the XC1 class, right where he likes to be. Now aboard that AmPro Yamaha. And there was a lot of questions after round 1. The haters, the doubters, could he do it? Well, right now, he is doing it and doing it well as he leads the XC1 field around here at the 8-mile mark.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure that he's not quite happy with that 14th overall place there at round number 1. We talked about it just a little bit before. Today is a good day for Caleb Russell to come out charging, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a lot of people, like you said, a lot of buzz coming into the season. 8-time returning champion, all-time wins leader on the bike side of things, coming back. But after a 4-year break, you know, you got to wonder how long is it going to take for him to shake the rust off and be competitive. Great start today, but we still have a lot of racing action left. And honestly, Caleb Russell was never really crazy dominant here in the sands of Florida. He won quite a few races, was always up in the mix, but I wouldn't say that the sand is his strength, if you will. So I'm not going to lie. I mean, I've spent all winter watching him ride, and I'm pretty surprised to see him out front being the one pushing the pace, but I think he's just kind of putting himself in a position where if he's feeling good, might as well go for it, and that's what he's doing right now.
Absolutely, and we were actually able to talk to your all-time wins leader, Caleb Russell, about his feelings here in Florida.
Absolutely, this place is very brutal. It's definitely a war of attrition out there for the most part. It's definitely more of a survival attitude coming into it. But yeah, it's very important to try to just keep the bike on 2 wheels and ride as efficiently as possible. So it's a war out there. It's looking like it's going to be fairly warm too. So it's definitely very, very difficult.
Definitely Florida.
So difficult, the word that these riders are using. And like I said, there's no such thing as an easy GNCC, right? But this one, Johnny, you can even touch on it. 2 wheels, 4 wheels. The riders have this one circled because they know, man, this one's going to be tough. Not to mention, this is one of the most physically demanding. But like we said, right when you stepped out, a very short turnaround before we go racing again in Talladega.
Yeah, you guys touched on the high points there. I mean, we know that GNCC racing is tough. We see our XC2 leader on screen there. It was Grant Davis, and just behind him, look at this. These two picking up where they left off last year. Gus Reardon back there in the number 2 spot. It's the 2 Landers KTM riders, then followed by, look at that, T-Rex, Nick Defo there in the number 3 spot. Interesting, one of the riders I was talking about who looked really dicey in those first couple corners wanted up there. Nick DeFeo's bike did not start quickly off the line. He was one of the last riders off the line. Went into the woods inside the top 5. It looked like he made some serious moves in those first couple corners of racing. I think he's one of those things, he knows, hey, I can't let these guys get away, especially when you have Grant Davis, 2nd overall here last year from that XC2 class.
I just expect it to be a fun race. I mean, I like riding in Florida. I mean, some people say it's a survival race, and that's just all the mentality you go into. I mean, I just tell myself it's going to be fun, and I just play out there, jump some jumps, and basically just give her some gas and some sand berms and get a whole bunch of sand down my neck, feel like I'm at the beach, and yeah, just go out there, ride my bike, and not really think about it. It's Florida. I just ride.
So we got to hear from him there. No doubt about it. Nick DeFeo has been the man with all eyes on him for these past couple weeks. So, Johnny, you think that'll take any effect on him? You think it'll give him some confidence?
You know what? When you're, I believe Nick's 19 years old, like, you're invincible, man. Like, and he came out, absolutely put on a riding clinic at round number 1 at Big Buck. Rarely, we saw him one time on screen get hung in a rut for just 5 seconds. Other than that, and there was a lot of talk after the race, like, hey, how did this kid do this? You know, was it just good lines? And the thing I said is, the beauty of Racer TV, you can go back and watch the entire race back. My goodness, that gentleman never looked like he was not the fastest rider on the track all day long. He was just absolutely pushing the pace, and the first rider out front flying. Like, he was the fastest rider on screen on the track all day long. coming into today, you know, I don't think he's the type of kid that suddenly thinks he's just going to run off and win every race all season. But at the same time, why not ride that wave while you're on it? I think he's got a pretty good attitude about it, and he just kept saying, you know, I rode my own race, and if he does that today, I think he'll be very much up in the mix. But has there ever been a more impressive ride, 3 rides into someone's XC2 career? I don't think so. So this kid's got big things ahead of him.
Without a doubt. And Jackson, we were talking about this morning. It's not getting caught up in the pressure, right? Getting caught up in the hype. Like we said, not only have we've been talking about, the entire industry has been talking about it. It's very easy to all of a sudden feel the pressure of the spotlight, and he's got some great tutelage and some great advice coming from his teammate. Obviously, they've got multi-time racer, even a winner, Ryan Sipes, his team manager, and he's got maybe a little big brother action coming from our guy, Stu Baylor. We were able to chat a little bit with Stu about T-Rex's performance at round 1.
Yeah, no, we definitely had success last week, and it was tough personally to want to be happy, but man, I was stoked on it. Like going first and second overall at the first National Enduro, going first and second overall at the first GNCC. What better way to start out a new year with a new program? But as far as my program, I know we've got to work. I've got some work to do. We've been hard at work on that all week, but I think as far as the XC2 class goes, to follow up with that, yeah, it was one of those events where they were able to get right to us, and nobody really wanted to lead. I did not want to lead. I wanted to sit in second. I was content. Ashburn and Lennon were up front, and the XC1 guys kind of slow down when we get to these mud holes. We scan, we try to figure out where we want to go, and that allowed that XC2 class to get to us. And as far as the race went, I think Nick was able to kind of spot and remember those bad spots from when he was passing XC1, and he just rode a flawless race. Not only that, but Josh and the rest of the XC2 class was right up there in the overall. They used XC1 as markers, and they've definitely gotten more strategic over the last couple of years, and I think they've paid attention to what they needed to do to put an entire race together, and that's exactly what they did. But as far as the XC1 class, like, yeah, I would love to see the progression like we used to, where about 17 you were going to XC1, but things have definitely changed, times have changed. And you know, XC2 is definitely fast, but when I grew up racing, it was 18 years old and you wanted to be out of that class. Like, you were trying to get to that front line. And now, I think with the television and other things, the XC2 class has become more of a career class, and it made me upset at the beginning, but now it is what it is. I've learned to accept it, and hell, now we're creating opportunities with it.
Well, there you go, fellas. Stu Baylor talking about those XC2 riders. Obviously, the Phenom, Nick Defo, winning our first round, and an XC2 podium sweep, overall podium sweep. And just like on cue, the XC2 is arriving at the back of the XC1 pack already here, 11 miles in at this FMF PowerPoint split line section. While we were watching the interview, we did get to see some passes. We actually saw Johnny Gerard with a burst of intensity in that left line work his way, it looked like, as they were leaving the camera, around Jordan Ashburn for that number 2 spot. He's the rider that actually made that inside line that we're seeing a lot of these riders taking now. They had the sand piled up kind of for the inside of the corner, but the way the course is marked, you know, you can go over that sand pile. Those guys looked at that very smart when they were. Johnny Gerard took it, Stu Baylor took it, and now it's quickly become the established line. And that's how quickly these courses can develop. And just like that, Johnny Gerard is now to the rear wheel of Caleb Russell. Caleb Russell on the 557, a former mentor, coach, trainer of the rider behind him, with Johnny Gerard throughout all the way up until summer break of last season when Johnny won that championship. And now it's teacher versus student and student versus teacher, and it's a battle for the lead at round 2 already in GNCC.
And that's what I was going to touch on, was the dynamic between these two. Obviously, tons of professionalism, tons of respect between the two of them. But yeah, Caleb Russell stepping away from that trainer-mentor role, stepping back into a race mode. All of a sudden, these guys aren't out at Ranch Russell. They're not out training under the advice of Caleb Russell anymore. What do you think that's like? Obviously, Ben Kelly, Johnny Gerard, several of that entire team been training out at Club MX. Plenty of sand training out there as well. You think maybe Johnny's got a little bit of a point to prove to his old mentor?
I don't think that's the case. I would say that is exactly the case. I don't think it's, I definitely don't think there's any per se bad blood between them. But I definitely think that Johnny seemingly took the the news the hardest. I think Caleb was very...
Are kind of the two names that get dropped when it comes to mental toughness, right? Are kind of the two names that get dropped when it comes to mental toughness, right? We're willing to go beyond the physical capabilities into a suffering area that few are willing to go into. And so this, like I said, this might be the tail of the tape right here for the next couple hours, because Johnny is clearly pushing the pace. He wants to get to the rear wheel of Caleb Russell, and I think he wants to get around him as well.
I think he does, and I think if Johnny does get to the front, he is going to do much like we saw Bryson Neal do yesterday. He's going to put in a sprint to try to break not only Caleb but the rest of the XC1 field. But judging by this shot, it already looks like they're starting to pull away from the rest of the XC1, and I think, you know, we're looking at this from a drone's eye view, but the reality of it is I think Caleb Russell knows exactly who's behind him right now, and you can see they have started to march away. Yeah, it's good racing, and one lap led. Caleb Russell leads the first lap here at the Wild Boar GNCC. Look over his shoulder, sees Johnny Gerard, and now here comes the rest of the XC1 field. We'll get the splits as they come marching in. Looks like now Jordan Ashburn checking in that number 3 spot. And then still looks like Lyndon Snodgrass there in 4th. It is 9 seconds back for Jordan Ashburn, so it's not like those guys have broken away by any means. Lyndon Snodgrass another 3 seconds back, and the rest of the XC1 guys starting to come in. Ricky Russell sitting in the number 5 spot. Mike Witkowski in 6th, Stu Baylor Jr. in 7th, and Ben Kelly in 8th. Now, what we're going to have to watch for, guys, on cue, how about
the XC2 class? Let's see. We wait. There goes Josh Strang making his way through, Craig DeLong, and we saw Grant Davis was right on the tail end of this XC1 freight train. Liam Draper passing through as well.
And here we go. Nope, not quite yet.
That is all, and then the next rider should be Grant Davis. How far up in the overall has he? And right behind him, looks like the
Gus Reardon right there.
Gus Reardon. We refresh, and Grant Davis, 2nd overall. Only 0.4 of a second behind Caleb Russell on corrected time. This is how close these guys are. Caleb Russell, 1st overall. Grant Davis, 2nd. Johnny Gerard, 3rd. And Gus Reardon in that number 4 spot. You got to think about that, guys. There's barely enough room to fit a motorcycle between these guys, but on corrected time, your XC1 1 and 2 and XC2 1 and 2 are literally in those gaps you see on the racetrack on screen when you correct the time. Crazy.
Yeah, I feel like this has introduced really a whole new aspect of GNCC racing. We've touched on it on the last few years. It's no shock to see the XC2 up front at the start of these races, but usually as time goes on, they start to fade further and further back. That's no longer the case. So these riders not only battling physically the riders around them, but they're starting to think more and more about that clock and the adjusted time because they know the intensity that the top XC2 riders bring to the table.
Absolutely. Looks like our 3rd place rider in that XC2 class, Nick Defo, has checked in 23 seconds behind Gus Reardon in that 3rd place spot in the XC2. Give you an idea of how things are spreading out. All the way back in 11th place overall. Now, when we say all the way back, it only seems that way because the 2 riders he's chasing, Grant Davis, 2nd overall, and Angus Reardon, 4th overall. So 23 seconds separates essentially 8 riders on the racetrack.
We saw Caleb Russell stopping, grabbing some hydration, a bit of water splashed on the back. However, Johnny Gerard was wide open. Let's see. They make their way through the pits here. Ooh, Johnny going just a little bit long.
Impressed by Lyndon Snodgrass again. A great run at round 1. Ricky Russell making some moves, getting up, getting around Mike Witkowski. Stu Baylor making a push. Ben Kelly right there, attached to the back end of that group, which extends back to, let's see, the 8th place in that XC1 class. And this is where things can get a little sketchy for these guys. These water holes that look, you know, only a few inches deep. I got to be honest with you. Johnny Gerard is in the catbird seat right now. Caleb Russell's the one that's going to have to find out for the first time today. They haven't been through this section of racetrack yet, exactly where the good lines are, where to try to, you know, make those passes, make those moves. You can see, look how much his bike sunk under when he wheelied through there. Man, that's a little bit risky, but if you're Johnny Gerard, you got a great view of exactly where you should and could go.
Yeah, and it looked like for at least this lap, Johnny Gerard kind of funneling in right behind the AmPro Yamaha. And so Gerard, like you said, able to take advantage of that not leading. It's such a counteractive thing to say, right? It's a benefit to not be leading, but for Johnny, it worked out for him and still maintains just a few bike lengths behind Caleb Russell. And we did see, as they were making their way through the pits, Gerard took a little look over the shoulder as well. Knows he's not under any immediate fire. Here comes the Flat Rock Motor Club gas machine of Jordan Ashburn, Snodgrass. Ricky Russell having a solid performance on that Triumph as well. Wachowski, Baylor, and then Kelly all right there. So that back group starting to tighten up a little bit more.
And I do think that the way this race is shaping up, if Caleb Russell and Johnny Gerard are unable to get away, they end up battling each other, and neither one can kind of break from the other one. I don't know that we'll see them march away. I honestly, as much as that, what we were looking at, 9 seconds at the finish line, looks to be a little bit more right now. If we don't see that jump up quite a bit this lap, I wouldn't be surprised if it stabilizes for a few laps and we start to see that group of the top 8 or 9 XC1 guys all come back together. Just how rough this track is going to be. These guys aren't just going to keep firing. If they can't get away, if they can't make the moves that they want to move, I think we'll see them start to settle into a pace that is a little more sustainable for 3 hours. Because I think right now, the pace, at least from the outside looking in, I don't know how you guys feel, looks pretty aggressive. I think these guys are pushing pretty hard for lap 1 of a 3-hour race.
Yeah, no doubt. I feel like Caleb Russell has to be fired up back in GNCC, back up at the front of the pack. I feel like he's really going to push it here today. But one thing we know for sure, guys, Gerard is no stranger to the sand, and I believe some of the KTM boys been at Club MX. We know they have some gnarly sand tracks there. So no doubt he's ready to go here in the sand.
Yeah, without a doubt. These guys have put in the work for sure. And I mean, we talk about the return of Caleb Russell, the guy, a legend in the sport, but they actually put out a pretty cool documentary, about 45 minutes or so, talking to Caleb pre-season. And one of my favorite things that he talked about was when to eat. That's the mentality that he's bringing into the season. Everybody, oh, you want to dip your toe back in the water, you want to see where you're at? No, I want to pick up right where I left off, and for me, I'm here to win. So Caleb Russell, he is not going to just hand over this #1 spot. He doesn't care if it's a #1 plate behind him, who it is. He's here to try to take home some wins.
And that documentary, definitely one to watch, get to hear some of the insight on him, some of what he was going through with KTM, and now what he's going through with Ampro Yamaha.
I think for me the most interesting thing about that documentary was the way that it looks like we have, is that Josh Toth? It is Josh Toth on screen there from that XC2 class, running up inside the top, I believe he was 6th or 7th when they checked in with 1 lap complete. The interesting thing for me was, when Caleb talks about all those years ago kind of calling himself out on, what he called his BS, like holding himself accountable, and that's really the human that he became, and that's a hard person to be, when you just kind of drive yourself seemingly to the limits or beyond of what you're capable of as a person. And what we're seeing today, I think at the beginning of this race at least, is Johnny Gerard and Caleb Russell so far willing to go deeper, willing to push each other and themselves harder, opening up a little bit of a gap. And this just to me looks like a war between these two already. And we're 36 minutes into 3 hours of racing. This is the kind of intensity you would expect to see the final lap coming for a win. So both of these guys are tough. You pointed out earlier, Zach, both of these guys are kind of known for being incredibly mentally tough. It's not a popular thing to say, but in my opinion, both these guys are broken. And I've said this before, and I'm not saying this to be dramatic. To succeed at an elite level in almost anything, there has to be a little bit of something wrong with you.
Yep.
You have to you're not a well-rounded human being generally. And I'm not saying these guys aren't great husbands, fathers, and great men, but they have to put themselves first. They have to prioritize their wants and needs when it comes to at least their chosen profession ahead of everything else in their life. And when you do that, you can get the most out of yourself. And you have to be able to go to places that the average person, would look at their heart rate, they would see how they feel, and they would say, no, man, we need to back it down. And these guys are saying, I can get more out of myself. I can push myself harder. All of these guys, not just the 2 out front, but right now those 2 out front are probably running the heart rate a little more into the red zone 5.
Yeah, they're obsessed with it, right? It's the age-old Conor McGregor quote, I'm obsessed. This is an obsession. This is who I am now. And these two are the embodiment of that at the front of the field. And this entire, like you said, XC1, the XC2 guys kind of coming into their own in that aspect of the sport, because that's what it has turned into, right? To be successful at the top level of this sport, it has to be everything that you have every time you go out on track. We see Cody Barnes there on the Phoenix Racing Honda. But one thing that I have noticed, we talk about thinking in the now versus thinking in the big picture. 3 hours of racing, it's hot, it's brutal. I've seen Caleb Russell reach for water twice when the team is passing him. Meanwhile, Johnny Gerard's back there eating sand wide open. We talked to some of the riders in the XC2 class talking about learning to, hey, I need to take the hydration when I see it. I believe it was Cody Barnes talking to me about that, said it's so easy to get caught up in the moment. You say, I don't need it right now, but then all of a sudden you're cramping up, you're dehydrated late in the race. A little bit of big picture thinking can go a long way in conditions like this.
Well, you know, and one of the most prolific things I think I ever heard as an athlete was when you feel like you need to drink, you're already behind, and you cannot catch up on hydration. It's impossible. Once you start to feel like you're cramping, you start to feel overheated, you start to feel dehydrated, it's too late. You can at that point kind of do maintenance and try to level off your situation or your condition, but you're not going to get yourself in the middle of an event like this where your heart rate's so high, your effort level's so high. You can't just take a quick drink and bring your heart rate back down. It doesn't work that way. You have to start right from the very beginning. And, you know, but I think it's one of those things, everyone's different. I know Caleb seems to be a rider that wants to have the water poured down his back, wants to take those bottles frequently, and obviously is wearing a hydration pack, which all these guys are. But some of these guys, and I can tell you I was one, I always felt like when I took those bottles, even when I would take a quick mental break to take those drinks, it would kind of mess up my rhythm. So I was one that would have a tendency to go too long before I'd force myself to drink, and I would really often pay the price on days like today. It's only, I think our high temp today is for like low 70s-ish, but if you've been out there, the sun is shining, it feels a lot warmer than it is, and you know, you've just got to, you got to kind of stay on top of it, exactly to your point. Interesting to see he's already doing that here today.
And no doubt Caleb Russell off to a good one here. He finds himself back at the top spot, and I think we got to talk to him a little bit about that top spot.
I guess the best way to put it would be I'm a sore loser, so I'm not just going to get run over. Like if I can't be there, if I'm not there, I typically will figure it out because I just won't let myself just continuously get beat. I think that's what makes me good. And, you know, a lot of guys, they just, it sounds bad, but there's a lot of guys out here that are content with just being good, and there's a few that aren't. You know, if you're content with being good and being in the race and maybe getting the podium here and there, and maybe contending for wins, then that's just not my MO, and never has been. Like, so I might come off as a sore loser, but yeah, I mean, there can only be one winner. So it's, and not to say that I'm going to come out and win straight away, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get back to that spot. I think, I hope, that's my plan. You know, hope's not really a plan, but deep down, I still have that in me. So, yeah, I'll figure it out. And when I figure things out, I'm able to make it replicable for me. So, yeah, I can be dangerous once I get there, you know, just a matter of time.
And a matter of time it was. Only one race under his belt here in the 2025 season. He finds himself leading here at round number 2.
And I don't think we can stress enough the experience that Caleb Russell has, not only in his just racing career, but in his success, right? He knows how to adapt. Think about all the challenges that he had to deal with. As once again, we see a little look over the shoulder, wants to see where Johnny's at, but that race intelligence is something that you just can't teach. It comes from experience, and it doesn't go away even after a 4-year break. Johnny, think he's maybe using a little bit of that right now?
I think he is, and when you say, I agree with you, but I'm going to also kind of give you a counterpoint here as well. When you say it doesn't go away, it's like any other skill. When you practice it day to day, it's sharper. You know, Caleb Russell still has all those memories and all the racecraft, but when you don't practice it, there's rust on it, you know? So I do think that having kind of a front row seat to the last 2 weeks, you know, after round 1, I think the amount of mistakes that he made and the way the race went, I wouldn't say he beat himself up about it, but he was vocal and definitely held himself accountable. I would, you know, I think it would be exciting to see him be in the mix throughout the day today and battle for a win like he is right now. But I think even already just leading a lap and up here's, you know, he and Johnny starting to pull away just a little bit, a few seconds. I mean, I think it shows the speed is there, so that's not really a big question. It's just, you know, kind of working all the kinks out to be able to make it replicable, as he says, you know, to do this week in and week out. I do think it's a challenge when you haven't done it for 4 years at this level. So it's impressive so far. We got a lot of racing left to go, and it does look like the rest of that XC1 pack starting to kind of latch back onto that pace. That gap definitely has stabilized, not getting any bigger. Jordan Ashburn back there pushing that. Looks like Stu Baylor's made some moves. He's moved up a couple spots. You know, he's a rider that definitely, after the very disappointing round 1 DNF, wants to get max points here today and wants to be in that battle for the win.
Well, and that was a big shakeup, too. We talked about the XC1 not on the overall podium, but Jordan Ashburn, a late DNF as well out there at round 1. So these guys saying, hey, we're fighting from our back foot now for the rest of the season, having to dig out of a hole for the rest of 2025. So, yeah, a little more sense of urgency probably from our XC1 guys knowing, hey, we really can't afford any more big ones because we started things off on the wrong foot.
So there is Craig DeLong, then followed by Josh Strang and Liam Draper on the 198 Ampro Yamaha. And that
was Grant Davis.
That was indeed. That's what I was just about to say. In the last shot, we saw those two absolutely on their heels. Duvall was almost around Draper at one point in one of the other camera shots, but it looks like Draper has been able to get that gap back there on Duvall.
Yeah, it's this track, more so than any other, is very segmented. The way it breaks down, like obviously we saw the deep water holes. There's looks like Cody Barnes has made the pass around.
That's that.
Oh, Thad Duvall stopping on camera. Looks like he's had a crash, and he's trying to straighten out the steering on that. Basically what he's trying to do there, banging against the tree. The forks will twist within the triple clamp and allow the front tire to kind of be at an angle, so they'll stop, either have someone kick it or they'll bang it off a tree to try to straighten it back out. We did get a word from our spotter that he crashed just short of that camera shot, so that's where he lost the time there. Looks like we may have just had a pass for the lead on screen, folks.
We do. A new leader. It looks like Gerard has been able to get around Caleb Russell. So the big number 1 showing off here. Now the question is, can Russell stay with him? Like y'all were talking about earlier with Russell, him being rusty and whatnot, how many times have we saw racers come back in any sport, not only racers, but in any sport, saw people come back and not ever get the ride or the showing like Caleb Russell's even getting today. So I'm very impressed with him, and it's going to be interesting to see if he's going to be able to hold on to that second place position.
It definitely will be interesting, and I think right now, kind of what I was mentioning yesterday, we saw Bryson Neal do. I think we're going to see the big number 1, just like yesterday, put in a sprint. He's going to try to break not just Caleb, the entire XC1 field. I think Johnny wants to control this race from the front. He wants to be out front. He wants to be getting gaps of 30 seconds, a minute, whatever it may be, and pull that big gap to try to get away, to really prove a point. Hey, guys, don't mess with me. You can't run with me today. So it is going to be interesting to see if Caleb Russell, number 1, chooses to try to go with him, and number 2, if he's able to, if he makes that decision to try to go with him, because it's very evident that Johnny is sprinting right now, and this is the highest pace we've seen so far in this race.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, Johnny Gerard, no stranger to the sand, and I believe we got to ask him about that this week.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I love the sand. I grew up in Southwick, so I just grew up riding the sand, and I feel like I gel well with it. And yeah, I'm excited to go racing here in Florida. I feel you know, it's definitely a survival race, but we send it too as well. So yeah, it's going to be good.
That age-old balance of survival and send, and man, he's full send right now as he is trying to stretch things out over the Ampro Yamaha. And Johnny Gerard, another one of those XC1 riders with a points deficit to be making up. We saw he got hung up for quite a while there at round 1, cost him big time. And so these guys riding with a little extra motivation right now, but yeah, opened it up, not a lot, but has put a few bike links on Caleb Russell here in the first minute or 2 of leading. And I think Johnny called it perfectly. The number 1 trying to set sail and control this from the front, and I don't know though, it's deceiving. It's hard to see on these Racer TV cameras, but we talk about the sand, we talk about things getting whooped out, but there's also these palmetto roots that are hidden underneath as we see Jordan Ashburn. Ashburn's not that far behind either. That Flat Rock gas might have closed things up, and Lyndon Snodgrass is coming right along with him. Scratch that, the entire XC1 freight train seems to be coming through as well, and we know on the tail end of that is those XC2 leaders.
The one thing I was curious of in that last shot that I started to mention, I wasn't certain if we did see Nick Defo in that camera shot. It almost seemed that Cody Barnes may have made the pass, so we'll have to pay attention here on this shot and see if Defo is still in that mix or if he may have lost a position, because we know he was up in that 3rd spot in XC2. Johnny Gerard on screen leading the way, and still just a couple seconds behind him there is the 5.57 of Caleb Russell. These two switching positions just about a mile of racetrack ago. Caleb Russell had been leading since early on, went into the woods third, was able to wrestle the lead away. Johnny Gerard marched his way up, made several passes in the first couple miles to get to that third place spot, getting around Jordan Ashburn in the split line section there at the FMF PowerPoint, and then making the move on Caleb Russell just about a mile ago, and now starting to try to stretch that lead out and get away from the 8-time champion behind him.
Yeah, it looks like Ashburn kind of starting to march that train back up towards these front two. We'll see if that train continues. To talk to our YXC1 Super Mini Senior winner from today, Travis Lentz. I said, who's it going to be this afternoon? He said, I don't know. Something tells me it's going to be Jordan Ashburn. So Lentz is cheering on the number 3, and there you see right now the Flat Rock Motor Club Gas starting to move forward. Not sure, kind of a yo-yo. Seems like some sections he's getting closer, some sections they lose some time. But one thing about it, Lyndon Snodgrass and the rest of the field, they are locked on the back of the number 3.
Yep, there we see Stu Baylor, we see Ben Kelly, we see Mike Wachowski, all of those guys just pretty much right together there in formation, and they are pushing each other and trying to push themselves back closer to the lead duo of Johnny Gerard and Caleb Russell leading the way in this one so far, and looks like Gerard has stretched it out just a few bike lengths over Caleb Russell for right now. And man, I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of the point I made earlier. How long will these guys, now Caleb Russell closes it back up just that quickly, like how long are these guys going to keep firing at each other, and can they continue to do this for 3 hours, or at some point is this lead group going to almost have to come back together? And we see lapped riders already becoming a part of the equation here, only 9 miles into lap number 2 of what we can probably guess is going to be a 5 or 6 lap race here today.
Yeah, a couple hundred riders out there on the course, so they're going to deal with plenty of lap traffic as this race continues on. Looks like so far so good for Gerard. Every section seems to gain a couple feet, maybe a bike length or two. And I have to wonder, not doubting his fitness by any means, but do you think it's possible that Russell has gotten a little winded here, maybe went a little too hard there on lap 1?
I mean, I think you're definitely, when you're the one leading the train, you're pushing the pace, you're exerting the most energy, it's easier to follow. So I could definitely see Caleb maybe getting a little higher in the heart rate than he would have liked to, but I don't know. We're not inside the helmet. Maybe he was perfectly comfortable at that. The one thing I will say, you know, as you get older, I think your body kind of gets a little more worn out and weathered, but for me personally, my endurance was never better than what it was in my mid to late 30s when I was racing. Something about, I don't know, you just kind of learn how to get the most out of yourself. I was definitely training differently and more, but I never felt like endurance was my issue for me personally. And you talk to a lot of athletes that are career athletes, and they say as they get later into their career, they learn a way to be more efficient, and they can actually continue their pace longer. The biggest issue is as you get older, it's harder to get up to speed. You can't get those, you know, when you're 18 years old, you can go from 0 to 100 like nothing. Absolutely, from sitting still, not warm up, jump on a bike, go wide open. When you're in your mid-30s like Caleb Russell, you need to spend a little more time with that warm up. So if anything, I would think the pace early would be the issue, which it didn't prove to be. We'll find out how much endurance he has here as this race continues on. Zach, we did see on screen there, looked like Grant Davis and Gus Reardon continuing to pick off XC1 riders one at a time. And I did not see Nick DeFeo. Did any? So we're not, no alarm, but I believe Cody Barnes is in that number 3 spot. He was only 3 seconds behind DeFeo when they checked in, and every camera shot since then that I've seen, I have not noticed Nick DeFeo, but I have seen Cody Barnes looking like he's in the number 3 spot. So Cody, I believe, up to the 3rd place spot in that XC2 class.
Yeah, Cody putting in a solid ride. You talk about going from 0 to 100, those XC2 leaders. Grant Davis out front right now, but Gus Reardon riding with a lot to prove. He's come up just short of the title 2 years in a row now, and he's talking about what it takes to have success here in the Florida sand.
Florida is just all about surviving. You just got to get through that. Got to get to the pit stop, and then if you're feeling good, you should be fine all the way into the end, but it's a suffer fest out there. Last year wasn't too bad because it was so wet. We weren't putting out so much effort and energy, but this year it's looking on the dry side, so it's definitely going to be a suffer fest, and I think it's going to be a little bit warm. Yeah, even though it's a sand track, it's not like a normal typical sand track where you can sort of get into a flow, double around the corners, and there's always palmetto roots, there's trees leaning half over, and then you've got the quads the day before, and then you've got the morning race, and none of the morning race people can get on top and hit it properly, so they just go through each hole and just give it to it and just dig them out, make them deep and awkward. And so sort of not until our third lap is when the track gets enjoyable. We sort of take the tops off it because we're sort of trying to get on top. Fastest way is just skimming through them, but saving energy, I'm trying to get a flow, but it's so hard because you get a flow and then there's a root there and it'll get you off, or you double around a corner and there's a low-lying branch, and so there's always just something to wreck your momentum, or a lapper or whatever.
Yeah, one of the big things we hear a lot of our riders, even in the youth class today, talking about is finding that flow, right? Finding a way to work with the track versus against it, and looking for an advantage anywhere they can. And one of the things that we've talked about, Johnny, is the advantage that the XC2 riders have as far as letting the XC1s kind of take that first lap, figure out the lines. And one thing that Grant Davis and Gus really seem to have figured out is if they can latch on to the back end of XC1 early, it can pay off for them big time. And we were actually able to talk to Gus a little bit about that and the advantage from XC2.
Yeah, us XC2 boys are sort of getting up in the mix with the XC1 guys. I've said it again, I'll say it before, we get the good hand dealt with us. The XC1 guys, they go out there first and they are dealing with all the lines and everything. They're putting in the lines for us and we've just got to come up in behind. It's obviously harder than what I'm making it sound like, but they do the hard yards and we just get sucked in along, and once we catch them, say we start a minute behind, if we catch them, we don't need to pass them or whatever. We can just stay there and we beat them because it's on corrected time. So that's when you get a good start, you push up to the front and then you sort of just get sucked along. First lap, ideally, get a start, get out front and get a bit of a gap, and then get yourself in with the XC1 guys and pass a few, and then say you get into 5th overall and the other XC2 guys are still in 10th. They've got to put a lot more effort into passing those guys later on in the race. So if you can get up front a bit earlier, you just get sucked along, where they've got to put more effort into passing.
And that's pretty much the exact same thing that he said there in our post-race interview last race when he was up there in that 3rd place position. So he thinks that there's a big advantage from looking there. Johnny, do you think that's the only advantage that they have, is from seeing these riders, what they're doing and exactly what's slowing them down?
I mean, I liken it to, yes, exactly. What he said is very accurate. But the other thing that I think is, it's that always having something to drag you along, that mental draft of seeing riders up ahead further on the track, and it just makes you want to chase that much harder. You know, when you don't have a rider in front of you, you can see it's hard to know what your pace is. As we can see now, Liam Draper and Josh Strang have fallen back into the clutches of the top 2 in that XC2 class. So there's Strang, then Draper, then it's Grant Davis and Gus Reardon. You know, the one thing I will say is, as things have started to string out a little bit, look at this, Cody Barnes has put in a push where if he would have looked up just a moment earlier, he would have seen the riders he is chasing. He would have seen the back of that big Landers KTM machine of Gus Reardon, and just ahead of him, the class leader, and was 2nd place overall, Grant Davis. I will say this, I think things are starting to string out a little bit, and just judging by what I'm seeing on screen, I don't know that the XC2 guys have quite figured out exactly how much the top 7 or 8 in that XC1 class have picked up the pace this lap. I think they lost some ground. I don't think we're going to see them fall out of the top 10 by any means, but I do think that even the top 3 there of Davis, Reardon, and Barnes, I think they're going to slip down in the overall just a little bit this lap, just by judging what we're seeing on screen, just not quite seeing the same intensity that we saw in lap 1.
Yeah, Barnes might have lost a little time on the overall, but it looks like he might have made some time up on those leaders. And when we talked at that Fan Fest before round 1, I think this is going to be a big season for Cody Barnes. He just always seems to not get mentioned, right? We talk about the XC2 heavy hitters, Grant Davis, Gus Reardon. We talked about Nick Defo. We talked about Josh Toth, but nobody really mentions Cody Barnes, as he's had some really solid performances, as we see our buddy Gavin Hampton there on screen. But man, it's just, I think this is one of those ones. He kind of smiled when I mentioned it at the Fan Fest. He's like, yeah, I don't get too mad about it when they don't mention me. He's like, I'll make them mention me after I put in a good result. And so excited to see what Barnes is able to do this season. Jason Tino, another one I'm looking for big things. He was up front early, fell back just a little bit. And I believe
Jesse
Ansley. Man, he has been flying through the sand
in the first turn. So
that is 5th in our XC2 class. Then Toth in 6th, and can confirm, as we see, look like maybe one.
Jack Walker, I believe.
Betas, yeah. So Jack Walker had a great ride at our opening round. No Nick Defo.
Yep.
We've still not seen him here at the 11-mile marker. We'll have to wait and see when these riders check in here in just about 2 miles. But this, isn't where you want to be if you're the XC1 and overall points leader. Now, obviously, well back outside the top 10, maybe even outside the top 15. We'll have to see if we can get an update on exactly where he's at and when they do check in with 2 laps complete.
Yeah, so keep your eyes out for the 246. Could this be him now?
That looks like him.
I think that's him, yep.
Makes it hard to tell on those Kawasaki
reverse plates.
Reverse plates, there it is.
I think we're going to see him back near the tail end of the top 15. So he's going to need to do some work to get himself back up in there in the mix to even contend for a podium in that XC2 class, let alone if he wants to get back up on that overall podium 2 rounds in a row.
And trying to use some context clues, I didn't see anything, handguards twisted or anything like that. So
the only thing I saw is it seemed he was a little, there was a little more black mud on him than the rest. There's a lot of mud holes out here that can just one line one way or another can make a big difference, and instead of just cruising through with no issue, you're buried up to the seat. Just making speculation. On screen, Johnny Gerard out front, and Caleb Russell's still there. Can still see him. He hasn't completely shaken him yet. Has definitely opened it up several bike lengths, but as they come in for what will be 2 laps of racing complete, and look at this, guys, 59 minutes, meaning this could potentially develop into a 6-lap race. And if it does, that's going to be a tough one for these guys.
Yeah, it is going to really use everything they've got in the gas tank, both man and machine. And we'll see exactly when they come around. Pit strategy maybe going to play into this one, or you think everybody's going to kind of funnel into those same laps?
I think we'll see both of these guys most likely fuel on this lap, and the reason I say that, generally these teams will try to do a one pit strategy. Here in Florida, with the risk of running out of fuel that we've seen so many times, these bikes just burn a lot more fuel. You're so hard on the throttle. You're trying to get that machine to go forward. It just burns a lot of fuel. I do think most, if not all, of these guys will be pitting for fuel on this lap, but we'll find out here in just a couple of minutes. Zach, you pointed out there, we got somebody on the move.
Well, I'm telling you what, Motley Stu Baylor headed to the front. He has picked off a couple of riders and was right on the rear wheel of Jordan Ashburn. So we saw it in one of those shots at the FMF PowerPoint. Baylor was charging hard, slamming that Rocky Mountain Red Bear Kawasaki into the sand berms and moving towards the front. So Baylor, he wants to make this a party for 3 up at the front of the XC1 field.
And you know who else we saw making their way up? It's going to be Ricky Russell there on that Enduro Engineering Triumph racing machine. So
up to the 6th spot there. As we'll run down the gaps here real quick while we watch this, I wouldn't say battle, but kind of parade for the lead here. Johnny Gerard seems to be pretty confident leading. Caleb Russell seemingly either not able to close up that gap or just happy with where he's at. He's just, on screen, a few bike lengths in the official timing scoring, 3.6 seconds. They're in the same camera shot, essentially can see each other. Seems like the pace is kind of stabilized for now. But even that said, we talked about it seemed like Jordan Ashburn had stabilized that gap. It's actually opened up. It was 9 seconds last lap. This lap, 33.9 seconds. So that gap has definitely opened up. Johnny Gerard taking the lead, picking up the pace. Caleb Russell going with him. They are continuing to now march a little bit, about an extra 24 seconds they pulled on lap number 2. Here we're going to find out, are these guys going to come in? Are we going to see some water bottles? Are we going to possibly see fuel, fresh goggles? These guys are going to get a chance to look at each other while they're taking their service here.
Well, one thing about it, Johnny, you were talking about the time and how hard they were charging. We're only a third of the way into this event. So I have to feel like you're right about Russell kind of settling in there in that second place spot. I'm sure he knows if he's in second place, that is just fine, as they still have 2 more hours to go.
And there we go. Looks like Johnny Gerard is in. Definitely getting fuel, taking some fresh Scott goggles. Little communication going on between he and a lot of communication back actually to the pit crew there. No pit for Caleb Russell. Interesting strategy. So it looks like the Ampro Yamaha guys are opting to go with the 1 pit strategy. They're going to pit on lap number 3. So he's going to have a little bit of a gap. Interesting strategy. I'm surprised by that, but might be something they discussed pre-race, and now Caleb does have about a 9-10 second gap or should, based on the amount of time that it takes to pit. But look at that. Johnny Gerard, full sprint mode. He knows he does not want to let Caleb Russell get on a sight. He is going to try to close this gap down as quick as he possibly can.
Jordan Ashburn now in the pit on the Flat Rock Motor Club. Oh, look at that, a whole new camelback he's putting on.
You see that here in Florida.
Yep.
It's not uncommon.
But as far as GNCC racing, that is kind of uncommon, isn't it, in a normal pit stop?
In general, yes, absolutely. That would not be something that you would see very often. Look at this. Johnny Gerard now in pursuit. Caleb Russell already on the other side of these water holes. You can see the mud fleas helping him out, pointing the lines. Normally, you would not see a camelback change, but here, again, with hydration being so important, I think that these guys are doing everything they can to just try to keep not only water, but cool water. That water or whatever you have in your hydration system, it warms up so quickly on your 100-degree back. It's out in the sun. Johnny Gerard's already closing down the little bit of a gap that Caleb Russell was able to open up when he passed and did not pit there on that trip through the pro pits.
We touched on the communication that we saw for Gerard in that pit stop. Do you think it was frustration on realizing that Caleb didn't stop, or I didn't really see any miscommunications as far as the goggles or the gas or anything?
Hold on, let's clarify one thing. What looked like frustration, Johnny Gerard's from New England
Intense
States.
communication,
He's an intense dude. You know, it could just be him looking back. It looked like he was maybe trying to communicate with Selena, his girlfriend, and letting her know, hey, I'm having a lot of fun out there. You know, New Englanders, they talk with their hands.
Yep. You look great.
You look great. You look doing well.
And Cody Barnes looked like made a pass there, so we'll see. Not sure if Phoenix is on that side of the pit lane or not, so Barnes still may have a pit to go.
Yeah, we'll see, but at least momentarily he did get back in touch with the lead rider, Grant Davis, and actually got around Gus Reardon. So as they check in where they slot in the overall, guys, you know, occasionally I get lucky. 9th place overall for Grant Davis. So if you look at the elapsed time, or even looking at the lap time, Johnny Gerard's fastest lap was a 30-minute 9 seconds. Grant Davis leading that XC2 class 31 minutes even. So 51-second faster lap time for Johnny Gerard and the leaders in that XC1 class. And again, dropping, so what did we say, Davis 9? He dropped 7 spots in the overall from where he was just a lap ago. But still leading that XC2 class, and I think as much hype as we made of it, and we should have, because they swept the overall podium positions. The reality of it is these guys are racing mainly for that XC2 win. Obviously, they like to get up there in those podium positions, but that's not necessarily their main goal when they hit the racetrack.
We don't call him Eagle Eye Johnny for nothing, able to almost exactly figure out where those XC2 guys are going to go. We did just get word from Race Control, 6-lap race confirmed, so we will have 6 laps of racing here today. And like you said, Johnny, going to be interesting to see how that pit strategy plays out. Johnny Gerard has caught up to a few, maybe half a second or so, if that, behind Caleb Russell. So Gerard, like you said, you could see the sense of urgency right after the pit. He knew he needed to get up there. Jason Tino now stopping in on the Flat Rock Motor Club gas.
And that is our 4th place rider in the XC2 class when they checked in. Looking like they're getting ready to make a few adjustments. Almost looking, I tell you what I think that was, looking like they were making a spring adjustment on the rear. Possibly they can use that impact. They have a preload adjuster that works off an 8mm, and they can add or subtract preload to make the rear end of that bike raise or lower depending on what the rider wants. Battle for the lead on screen with lap riders very much in the mix now.
This is the one of the unpredictable variables, I should say. We saw this big in our WXC race earlier as well. Lap riders all over the place, and it's just as much about lady luck as it is anything else. You can't really time when you catch up these riders. We saw that one lap rider going down just after the leaders got around him. Had it been a few seconds earlier, he could have taken one of our leaders down with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many factors, and of course this rough, a lot of these guys, I can tell you right now, guys, you guys are both much better dirt bike riders than I am. In the loose sand, it would be difficult for me to try to, especially as I get tired as this 3-hour race wears on, to even hold my line as the lead riders are trying to, get around me and lap me, and that can very much play into the results of these races.
So it sounds like some bad news for Thad Duvall, getting some word that Thad going to be towed out of the woods. And Johnny, as you know, when you get towed, no go, so he is going to be done for the day.
Once you tow, no more go. Unfortunately for Thad Duvall, that news will signal the end of his Wild Boar GNCC. Looking like Ben Kelly's starting to get a little racy, making some moves. He's actually gotten around Stu Baylor. We don't know where that fits in with pit strategy there. And on screen, it's hard to tell who that was there. Things definitely mixing up within that pack. Was that Cody Barnes?
I thought that was what I saw. I saw some of that Moose Racing gear. It looked like.
If that was Barnes, it looks like he may have made the move around Grant Davis, unless that was Davis in that mix. A lot of sand flying there. Yeah. Hard to tell who some of those guys were.
Great shot here from our Yamaha Racing live drone.
And this is our bike-only section. So the ATVs did not run this section of race course yesterday. The first time it was touched was this morning during the AM bike race. But I was told that even just in the first 2 laps of that morning bike race, what was a great line on lap 1, riders were stuck in up to their seats on lap 2. So you can see a lot of standing water out there. We did get about 2 inches of rain here on Monday. So even though we see the sand pretty dry, you got to remember, guys, we're basically at sea level here, so you don't have to dig very deep anywhere in Florida to find water. And when it rains, the water table rises even higher, meaning it's very easy to pick a bad line and get stuck here today.
Well, a couple things worth noting is we did clean up the quad ruts from yesterday, and some of the sections that they were able to, they took a dozer, smoothed it out. But another thing worth noting, Zach, we had over 500 riders in our AM race here this morning, so no doubt it is back. And kind of going back to what you were saying, Johnny, about the track and about these riders having a hard time holding their line very hard in the sand. And one thing about the sand is the one bump after another for the entire course, and that gets very hard. What you see it?
You want to see a sense of urgency there. That lap rider trying everything to get out of the way, but it was a very one-line section. He was in the rut, held up Caleb Russell a little bit. Now Johnny Girard literally right to the rear knobbies of Caleb Russell's Dunlop rear tire there. They are all over each other, and this is a battle for the lead.
I think this would be a small mental victory if Johnny's able to get right back around him here, knowing that Caleb still has to pit on this next lap. I mean, got to think that's going to be a little feather in the cap for him going into these final couple of laps.
Absolutely, and not only just even if he gets around him, but just getting back to him. It's knowing that Caleb Russell, by all accounts, would have to pit this lap. Johnny Girard will have the opportunity to do the exact same thing that Caleb Russell had a chance to do, which was stretch out a lead. Johnny Girard already able to reel that back in. We're going to find out in a few miles here if Caleb Russell pits and Johnny Girard puts in a sprint lap, if he's able to open up a gap. And that is an opportunity I'm sure he's very much looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm not judging Caleb Russell's move there. He's the most winning GNCC dirt bike rider of all time, so he knows exactly what he needs to do out here. But what do you think the advantage that Caleb thought was, just so that he could overtake that lead? Do you think his plan is he's going to get far enough ahead of Girard that he can be able to pit without getting passed again? What do you think is going through his head?
I don't actually know. I can tell you for me personally, and also you got to keep in mind, guys, like the rider doesn't always get to make that call because you don't know how long the laps are going to be. So the team and Caleb may have had a discussion beforehand, or it could be a thing where Caleb just says, hey, you guys know the lap times. You're going to figure it out. Let me know when I need to pit. I personally, if I was in Caleb's shoes and had the ability, I would have communicated, hey, since we're battling, let's stay on the same pit stop strategy as Johnny, so we just keep the racing out on the track. That said, it's a power move. If Caleb only has to pit once and Johnny pits twice, and Caleb's able to get away, then you can kind of make a statement there. But like you see, it's easy. Hindsight's 20/20 with Johnny already closing that gap up, and Caleb now for sure having to pit this lap. It kind of shifts the ball into Johnny's court of now if he's able to, or even make a pass beforehand, he knows Caleb has to pit, and it puts him in the position where he gets a chance to try to stretch that lead out.
But Girard will need to pit again.
Johnny will absolutely have to pit again in a 6-lap race. There's no way any of these guys are going to be able to go 4 laps, seeing as basically we're talking an hour for 2 laps, so 4 laps would be 2 hours. None of these machines, especially in the sands of Florida, at the pace they're running them, are going to be able to go 2 hours. 3 laps, which is what Caleb Russell is trying to do here, is going to be basically an hour and a half. That's going to be the higher end of the range of these machines and these fuel tanks.
All right, well, we're seeing the battle go down on screen. It looks like Russell able to put another bike length or 2 between himself and Johnny Girard.
I got to tell you guys, we're an hour and almost 15 minutes into this one now. I was surprised to see Caleb get to the front so early and push the pace. And now that they've picked the pace up and started, we don't know exactly where the gaps are, but 33 seconds that they have pulled over the rest of the XC1 field. But again, right there, lapped rider holding up just a few milliseconds, but those start to add up. This is where the race gets interesting. I am surprised to see that this group hasn't come back together, and I think what that shows is that the pace of these front two right now is just a tick above what everyone else is running. I didn't expect to see them keep it up like this. I thought we'd see this front of this XC1 pack come back together for a couple laps, and then in the final hour of racing, they'd sort it out. So, caught me a little off guard here.
Got to touch, maybe a little bit of the riding for pride, a little bit of passion there, like we talked about. There is a touch of personal going on here between these two, but one thing about it, they are leaving it all out on this Wild Boar course here to start out round number 2, a third of the way through as they make their way through at mile 6. And yeah, there is a perfect example of that gap set up. Still did not see third place coming through. Johnny Gerard was able to get around Caleb Russell and grab the lead. Saw Russell come in, a little look over the shoulder, grabbed the tear off, and went in for the stop. Some expressive communication going on. That's all that was. And Caleb Russell opting to not go for the pit. But no fear, because Johnny Gerard said, all right, guess I'm just going to have to track him down once again. And the Red Bull FMF KTM got to work. There you see the gap Russell was able to open up. We're going to grab a word from our sponsors and find out how it all shakes out here from the Moose Racing Wild Boar GNCC.
Unleash aggression, reliability, and premium quality with Kenda Tires. Delivering exceptional performance on all types of vehicles. Automotive, ATVs, UTVs, motorcycles, bicycles, trailers, lawn and garden, and even golf. Trust Kenda Tires to guide you on your next adventure. Kenda, designed for your journey.
Born of family values and a homegrown work ethic, Cometic Gasket seals your machine so you can focus on the finish line. Cometic Gaskets are the competitive standard for racers who demand the very best inside their engine. Cometic Gaskets are always constructed from superior materials designed to perform in the most demanding environments. Whether it's a championship on the line or a day in the dirt with friends, professionals and enthusiasts alike depend on Cometic. Cometic Gasket, sealing championships since 1989.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Moose Racing Wild Boar, where we've been watching Johnny Gerard along with Caleb Russell battling it out. And before we get back to the racing, I believe we had a chance to talk to Johnny about just that.
You know, we went from training together the last 3 or 4 years to now we're racing each other, and you know, there's no doubt about it. He's special and found something special. He's an 8-time champ. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I think, I think it's cool and good for the sport and exciting. I think there's a lot more people watching Big Buck now, just knowing that he's back and wondering what he's going to do, and wondering how we're going to, the pros now to him coming back, how we're all going to stack up against each other. And yeah, I think it's good for the sport, and I think it's cool, and yeah, we'll see where we're at.
And we're getting to see that right here today, no doubt.
It was an interesting perspective from Johnny, and I think he's kind of been along that line of thinking since he found out the news. a lot of the XC1, XC2 guys and a lot of industry people have said it's cool because it adds another element to the storyline. How it pans out, no one will know. But we haven't really seen... We saw Ryan Dungey come back in motocross and supercross on screen. This is the battle. Caleb Russell still leading the way. Johnny Girard lurking behind right there, just right on his rear wheel as they're coming near now the 8-mile marker, working their way back towards the 9. They'll come right next to the finish line, and they get that little tease of we're almost done, and then they head out for a whole another inner loop, another 4.5 miles, actually, before they make it back to the finish line at the 13.5-mile marker. But I don't know that we've ever seen it in off-road. You know, we've had some riders come back after some time away, but someone with the resume of, look at this. Lyndon Snodgrass is now up to the number 3 spot. Then Mike Witkowski in 4th. Looks like those two have now started to open things up just a bit over the rest of the XC1. I think that's kind of been the messaging, is a lot of people are excited for it, even the riders themselves. More eyes. Caleb obviously has a very impressive resume, and a lot of people are interested to see, can a 35-year-old come back after 4 years completely away from racing and compete at this level? And the story right now is for an hour and 15 minutes, he can. It's a 3-hour race, but for an hour 15, he's shown himself to be in the mix for the win here today.
Going into the season, we all kind of had our expectations of what would Caleb do. And round 1, I'm not saying throw it out, but, I mean, it was an anomaly, right? It was weird, rainy, muddy day. And he comes out of that not doing great. We come to Florida, trains in Florida, very good in the sand. I thought, okay, today's the day we see Caleb put a Caleb Russell-like performance on. Johnny, I didn't expect this, though. This has been stellar. He's going to have his work cut out for him, though, once that pit comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to find out a lot here in the next couple miles of racing. Caleb, we talked about it, as a very high race IQ. He understands how this all works. He knows the rider behind him is already pitted.
Yeah.
He passed him while he was in the pits. Caleb knows that he's going to need to make a pit, but at this point, even if he tries to put in a sprint, as you can see right there, I mean, lapped rider around to another lapped rider. Now, Johnny's stuck behind that rider. So the whole entire dynamic, this is no longer just 2 riders, how fast they can go. A lot of things come into play here. Where this pit sorts itself out after they get back into the single track section is if Caleb Russell isn't able to close up that gap on Johnny Girard pretty quickly after the pit, Johnny Girard has a really great opportunity to try to use lappers as, when you say blockers, these riders never intentionally block, but if you catch them at the right time and you put them between you and the rider pursuing you, it's almost like those guys get like a pace car for a section of racetrack, and you can open up 5, 10, 15 seconds in the matter of just a few hundred yards, especially on a track like this, so rough. And to your point, Mikey, I'll be honest with you, I've never really regarded Caleb as a very impressive sand rider. Like, I look at Johnny Girard coming from Southwood. Ben Kelly had a crazy dominant performance here in 2022. Like I said, Caleb Russell's won this race a number of times and does train here all winter. But just, to me, the sand favors the taller, lankier riders, big, long legs. It's not Caleb. I think he's 5'3". You know, he's not actually, but I like to make fun of him and Craig. The reality of it is, though, for him to come out here and do this, I think it's a big statement. But again, we're an hour and 20 minutes into this. We're going to see how it shakes out. I've definitely been impressed, very much so, with the way he's been riding through the first 2, now almost 3 laps of what we believe will be a 6-lap race.
Yeah, and I'm excited about it being 6 laps. It's going to be a grueling 6. This is one where the guys are going to be off.
You're excited. Jackson, are you excited?
Oh, I'm excited.
I'm excited, but I feel really bad for these guys.
Well, okay, that's what I was going to say. These guys are going to be lethargic at the end of this one.
6 laps is going to absolutely decimate these guys.
Yeah,
We're going to see them collapsing when they cross the finish line.
Yeah.
This is going to be an athletic endurance event more than a dirt bike race.
This is the one where they're going to post the average heart rate for this race, and anybody outside of our sport's going to go, there's no way that's possible.
Yep. You've seen that before.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's what today will be.
These guys are running heart rates, high 170s, maybe even in the mid 180s, and they're just going to sustain them for 3 hours. That's how intense this race course is. The average person, you say you get your heart rate about 155, like, you better do something, you better calm down. And these guys were at like 140 on the starting line. Racing still, Caleb Russell still leading the way. Johnny Gerard still in pursuit. We're now looking, probably getting closer to that shot at the 11-mile marker, Jackson. We've got that split line. This is an opportunity. You went out and checked that out, talked about it in the pre-show. We've had 2 laps through there, and all the riders behind them, all the A classes, all the B classes, all the age classes. This could be a thing where we might see a move for the lead here. So far, it's been that left line proving to be faster. That may all change here coming up in just a matter of seconds. How about it?
Yeah, just like we talked about yesterday. They're going to all use that left line because they think it's a little bit faster. Before this race is over, I can almost guarantee it's going to get so beat up that that right line is going to be faster. And if those riders can mentally get that in their head that, hey, everybody's taking that left line, let me go to the right this time, that definitely could be a very good place to pass.
As we watch this battle unfold, we were just talking about the heart rates, Johnny, and how this is different if you're outside of our industry. Man, what's the perception of GNCC? We actually have a really cool short segment where we asked some of our pro guys, hey, describe GNCC in one word.
GNCC racing in one word, I guess I would just say gnarly, or brutal. It's just one of those things where a 3-hour race is a long endurance race, so it's tough on you mentally, physically. For us, we're the last race of the weekend, so the track is really beat up, really worn out, and the competition is tough. So you're having to push, past your comfort level constantly. You just have to be mentally tough and grit it out more than anything.
It's tough. 3 hours is a long time, and a lot of stuff goes through your head. Whether it's at the start of the race or the last lap, it's tough. You're in a battle with other people. You're in a battle with yourself. Like, who can push through the hardest, push through the tough, the tougher the conditions. Who's fighting the most pain, because nobody's having a perfect day.
I would say 2 words: mentally tough. I think GNCC is 70-80% mental, and the other part is obviously got to be in shape. But if you tell yourself you can, you're going to do it. And if you tell yourself you can't and you're tired, then you're not going to do it. So I think describing GNCC would be mentally tough. That's you need to be mentally strong. There's a lot of fast guys that can go fast for 2 hours. There's a lot of fast guys that can go fast in practice and sprints and all that stuff. But this is a whole different ball game, and I would say mentally tough would describe GNCC for me.
The racing duration here, 3 hours of racing, is gnarly. There's nowhere else you get that kind of consecutive intensity for 3 hours on a track that breaks down and is as technical as they get. Even when we have a smoother track or an easier track, still the intensity factor for the race is it's gnarly. Because the amount of calories you burn and the amount of intensity that's on the track racing head to head, there's nothing else like it.
The only word that really comes to mind is brutal. It is brutal. It kind of, not every race is brutal, but the series as a whole is brutal. 3 hours, give or take, 13 times. It's not like there's a ton of rounds, but there's a lot of racing hours in that 13-hour time span. So it makes you, it really makes you question yourself and figure out what you're made of. That's for sure. Especially when it's hot and humid and dry and dusty or muddy, and there's so many different variations and variables that can and will happen eventually, and to keep your body in the bike and your mind in it for 13 times and 3 hours every time, it's tough. So I feel like it's just brutal is the definition, the term I would use.
Family's a pretty good word. Everyone is one big group here, and I can walk onto most of these trucks, and everyone's happy to see you and excited and wants the best for you. And the same for this team here. It's a big family. We all go to the start line together wanting to beat each other, but once the helmets come off, we're all good friends and hang out and talk. It's pretty cool.
Well, 3 words that popped up. Liam threw us a curveball there with family, which is very much what GNCC is about. But when you talk about the racing, 3 words popped up over and over.
Brutal.
Tough,
brutal
yeah.
and gnarly.
Yeah.
And that really does sum up, in my opinion. I've run a few of these races at a pretty high level, and it's such a mental test, mentally tough. Johnny Gerard said, and that's exactly it, is you can't really express how hard this is mentally. Like physically, we talked about the heart rates. You're up in the 180s, you're up in the 190s sometimes, and it's a long, long day behind the handlebars, but you start questioning yourself of, can I keep doing this? You heard, I forget who it was, mentioned at some point, like you start to wonder, why am I doing this? Can I sustain this? It might have even been Johnny, but those thoughts go through everybody's heads. But these two broken individuals up front that are, former and current GNCC champions, and anyone who's competed at the highest level understands that you have to just silence those thoughts immediately, because the moment you doubt yourself, you find your own weakness. You have to push yourself through that. And I don't know, man, it sounds like a broken record, but you look at the heart rates. You see these guys' faces when they come in after. You guys have been there. You've interviewed them. These guys are done, and these guys train as a full-time job. I get it, man. I know marathon runners and cyclists and football players take these big hits, but in my opinion, this sport is right up there as one of the, it just tests you. It tests who you are as a person and how much you believe in yourself.
I can't remember what the exact Google is, but it's something like if you Google the most demanding sport or the most grueling sport, the very first picture is Caleb Russell, and he's coated in mud, and there's snot and tears and spit running down his face, and and we start our kids off on stay 6.
We say you're 4 years old, age 2, and say, hey, you got to start figuring out how to do this. But I honestly believe that this makes some remarkable human beings that are capable of things that the average person can't even wrap their head around. And it doesn't matter if you've ever swung your leg over a dirt bike, if you've ever even been to one of these races, you're a part of this, and you get to see some very unique achievements, what these guys put themselves through, and for the duration that they do it. You don't see this in other sports, guys. It's pretty superhuman.
I'm a street bike guy, and if I go ride my street bike for 3 hours straight, I get off. I'm lethargic at the gas station thinking, what the heck am I doing out here? You're a little disoriented. And that's a leisurely, nice ride down a blacktop street. This is woods racing. This is just like nothing else.
Oh, yeah, manhandling those bikes. We got 39 hours of racing that they're going to do over these 13 rounds.
Yeah, that's...
And both the two guys on screen, Johnny and Caleb, I've spent time with both of them. And just to give you an inside view into how their minds work, at different times recently, I've gone on a 5-hour bicycle ride with Caleb for fun.
Oh.
Now, it was fun for him. It wasn't fun for me. I was on an e-bike, by the way. He
Good
was not.
for you.
Good
for you.
Back when I used to train, I was not on an e-bike. But Johnny Gerard's a sicko, man. I've seen this guy on a bicycle, different forms of athleticism. I mean, they glaze over. Their eyes are just, they almost start to roll back in their head, and they go to this place where they're broken. But it's awesome to watch when you see it on screen or when you see it in person. You can't get any more out of yourself than any of these guys running in the top 20 overall are right now. And somehow these two are getting enough out of themselves that they're opening up a gap. 33 seconds is what it was last lap. Caleb Russell back to the point position. We don't need to talk about the gap. You can see it on screen. 2.2 seconds. How much has the gap opened up, or has Jordan Ashburn, Stu Baylor, we think Lyndon Snodgrass up to the third place spot last we saw, looking like he was putting in a push. He's checked in 34 seconds. So only losing 1 second this lap is Lyndon Snodgrass in that number 3 spot. So he has stabilized that gap to the top 2, 34 seconds back. Sitting there now, some more riders checked in. Ben Kelly putting in a push. He's now up to that number 4 spot, only 1.5 seconds behind Lyndon Snodgrass. Then Mike Witkowski, another 1.7 seconds back. And as of right now, those are the only riders that have checked in. So your top 5 have checked in.
Ricky Russell checking in just then, as well as Stu Baylor. So, Ricky,
so that is your 6th and 7th place, 26 seconds back to Ricky Russell from Mike Witkowski. So the top 5, we've got that
relatively big gap, 34 seconds between your second place rider of Johnny Gerard back to Lyndon Snodgrass, then those guys flying in formation back to Mike Wachowski, then another 26 seconds back to Ricky Russell and Stu Baylor, those being the only riders checked in back now to the number 7 spot in the overall. And guys, this is where we're going to see Caleb Russell in just a few corners here is going to have to pull in, grab some fuel for that Pro Racing Yamaha YZ450. Johnny Gerard is going to have an opportunity on that Red Bull Racing KTM to try to stretch a lead out, and you can see Caleb trying to make as quick of time as he can to get to that pit, knowing that the big number 1 KTM of Johnny Gerard lurking just behind him there.
So pit strategy coming into play in what will be a long 6 laps here for these guys in the sands of Florida.
I've got a request. Do you think we could see if maybe Johnny would just wait for Caleb to pit?
So
no, hold on. But let me,
this.
and then next lap, when Johnny has to pit again, Caleb waits for him. Because I just want to see this race continue.
Yeah, no,
I don't want lappers
good.
in the mix. I don't want to see, how strategy plays out. I just want to see these two race each other.
This has been good. And Johnny knows it, obviously. Able to slow down, check up right there, make sure he gets the handoff on the water bottle. And Caleb Russell into the Ampro Yamaha pits, and new leader Johnny Gerard out in front. Quick pit stop for Caleb. All business as usual. Water down the back. Cool off a little bit. Cold towel on the back as well.
We will see here what exactly that gap is. Johnny Gerard putting in a sprint and trying to open up this gap. He knows he's got an opportunity here. Caleb Russell spending a little time in the pits, get some fresh goggles, some hydration. Caleb Russell again looking like now he's the one putting in the big push, trying to close that gap back up to Gerard, who now has that point position.
I would say roughly around 20 seconds from what I could count there, so a little bit down now for Russell.
So great opportunity for Gerard here. Again, the lap traffic, going to get into that. Gerard pretty well got to stay perfect and make sure he's capitalizing. And there is Russell.
The gap is about the same as what it was, because if you remember last lap, Caleb Russell was wheeling that last water puddle when Johnny Gerard hit the first, but Johnny made great time in that section and was able to close up very quickly. They were on this straightaway at the same time last lap, and Caleb Russell not yet on. Oh, actually, there he is. So, yeah, Caleb making up time relatively quickly there as well, looking like he's got it down to less than 10 seconds already. So that is a push. He does not want to let Johnny, almost connecting with the lap rider there. I do not think that lap rider had any idea that he was coming.
The freight train. Yeah, Caleb saw that little line right there, and he said, I'm getting there before you do. I don't care what happens.
Yeah, and that shows he knows. He knows that Johnny Gerard right now is putting in a sprint, and Caleb Russell is going to do everything he can to try to get back to the rear wheel. If he's able to do, if he's not, trying to chase a ghost that you cannot see is so hard. If you're not in the same section of racetrack and you can't look up and see him there, you just don't have that carrot dangling to chase. And you can see Johnny Gerard out of camera shot here, even from our Yamaha Racing Live drone. He's out of sight right now on Caleb Russell. Caleb's going to do everything he can to close it up. Flip side of that, if he can do what Johnny did and get back to the rear wheel of Gerard, then that kind of momentum switches again, because we know Johnny has to pit at the end of next lap. But we'll see, man. This is going to be a very interesting couple miles of racing, because I think what we're going to see is, as you see there,
that was good.
All-out sprint from both of these guys.
Good little save.
Oh, looks like we have one of the beta riders. Oh, that is Josh Strang in at the factory beta tent. They're looking like they've got the trying to get things sorted to maybe head back out, try to gain some points here today.
Josh Strang down there pulling the double duty, also team manager for those guys. Beta team.
Yeah, tough break for him. Hopefully he can get back out on the track.
I could be wrong, guys, but I think I just saw Caleb Russell with both feet off the pegs twice in two corners. I think this is everything he's got, trying to run down Gerard after Gerard able to open up that gap while Caleb Russell was in the pits. Now Craig DeLong in, some water down the back, making an adjustment to that Rockstar Racing Husqvarna, getting a little coaching from the girlfriend KB there, telling him, hey, get out there. Those guys are up in front of you. Go chase them. Our 2023 champion, Craig DeLong, sitting back last we saw in that 13th place overall position.
Having to retire early there at round 1. You know, Craig DeLong wants to come out swinging here at round number 2.
Guys, it looks like we are checked in all the way back to 17th place overall. So let's get an update on Grant Davis jumping back up now to the number 6 spot in the overall. So a good lap for the XC2 guys. Gus Reardon still there, 8.4 seconds behind him. So those two still very much battling over that lead position. And Cody Barnes checked in 25 seconds behind the lead duo of Davis and Reardon in that number 3 spot on that Phoenix Racing Honda. Jordan Aspern, a big loss that lap, all the way back to 11th place overall, in 31 seconds behind Stu Baylor, who sits in that number 9 spot in the overall, just ahead of him in that XC1 class. On screen is your leader.
Yeah, Johnny Gerard looking smooth. He's looking very smooth, very selective on his lines.
Yeah, I believe that was Caleb popping into the shot.
It looked like it was, yeah, right there at the end.
So he is making up some ground.
Oh, you can see grabbing at those lappers and just not able to get around quickly. Is that Ben Kelly? On screen, Kelly has now worked his way up, gotten around Lyndon Snodgrass to the number 3 spot, starting to make some time up on Caleb Russell. We may very soon here, and that may have been Liam Draper. Hard to tell. That rider's moving. I think that was Mike Wachowski, actually.
Okay,
I caught an 8.
Yeah, speaking of Liam Draper, you know, Liam, when he started his XC1 career last year, not off the podium all year long.
Yeah.
And which, how many was it? I believe 3 races?
4.
Yeah,
every round after summer break, he was on the overall and XC1 podium.
So a tough start to the season for one of our title contenders.
There is Nick DeFeo. You can see kind of a little hand, not super happy with the way things are going as he checks in the 17th place overall, making him 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th place in that XC2 class, just ahead of Jack Walker, who's running in 8th. There is Stu Baylor. Oh. Maybe Cody Barnes. No, it's not. I saw the Honda shroud.
A good ride here for that Enduro Engineering Triumph team as Ricky Russell makes his way around in that 8th place position on the overall.
Absolutely. Debut for Triumph in the elite level of GNCC Racing just 2 weeks ago at Big Buck. And there we see Grant Davis on screen. Looks like, is that Reardon in front of him as he made the pass? I believe we may have a new XC2 leader. And now we see Liam Draper there on that AmPro Yamaha, a former XC2 champion. As we talked about, a great debut, 4 races in XC1, all 4 on the podium at the end of the 2024 season. 2025 not starting out quite as strong for Liam, but we know he will surely fight back. Had a mechanical issue, DNF. Oh no, there's Reardon.
Yep.
So actually, Grant Davis has opened up and that looked like the 501 of JoJo Cunningham possibly there. We know he's not up in the overall. May have been a rider running 501 that isn't actually JoJo. He was another rider, had a great opening round. I mean, fifth overall out of that 250A class. A difference here today, only one rider with 3 laps complete in the top 20 overall. One amateur rider, and that is Gavin Simon in the number 20 spot on his Husqvarna out of Bennington, Vermont from that 250A class. He is actually leading the way, and that is your top amateur, followed by Hunter Smith and Lane Whitmer, 7 seconds and 9 seconds behind him. That's 20th, 21st, and 22nd. So what a difference 2 weeks makes. 2 weeks ago, we had 3 or 4 riders inside the top 10 overall from that 250A class, or sorry, 2 riders in the top 10, 3 in the top 20, and then today, only 1 rider inside the top 20 in 20th position. Same goes for our XC2. And then we see, is that Craig DeLong?
Craig DeLong on screen. And one thing worth mentioning, Johnny, the 2024 results here at Wild Boar was Johnny Gerard taking the win, Grant Davis second, Stu Baylor third, Lyndon Snodgrass fourth, and then Gus Reardon in the 5th place position.
Interesting. I actually forgot that Lyndon had such a good ride here. So, a rider out of Australia, maybe a little comfortable in the sand, rode very well at round 1, 2nd place in that XC1 class. And, a great debut for him on what I believe we still is a Snodgrass Racing Husqvarna is correct. The official team name.
Yep.
So a rider that had a factory ride with that Babbitt's Monster Energy Kawasaki team. won a championship in that XC2 class, moved up to XC1. That team kind of consolidating with the Red Bear Rocky Mountain ATVMC Kawasaki team. No place for Lyndon there on that team. He said, hey guys, I think I can invest in myself, come out and race, and so far it's been a great opening 2 rounds for him as we're running.
Yeah, it's been fantastic for Lyndon. Had a third place in the XC1 in round number 1, doing very well here today. And as you said, Jackson, he's good in the sand. We actually had a chance to catch up with Lyndon prior to today's race about that.
Yeah, the Wild Boar down here in Palatka, it's definitely a gnarly one. That's quite deep sand and usually quite warm, and yeah, it definitely makes it tougher racing, and yeah, I guess it is more of a survival, but for sure you always want to do good, so we'll yeah, we kind of just come in and see how it goes. Yeah, for sure the third hour is definitely tough. I don't know, you always want to just try and finish strong as possible. Sometimes the third hour feels easy, and then on a bad day it feels like the longest hour you've ever had in your life. So I don't know, going through the head, you just want to hopefully you're feeling good and just want to push to the finish line.
All right, so on screen, your leader, Johnny Gerard, trying to march away after retaking the lead from Caleb Russell that he gave up while he was pitting. 1 lap later, the shoes on the other foot. Caleb Russell in the pits, getting some fuel. Johnny Gerard getting around and able to start to stretch out a lead here. We'll see if we can get a clock on the gap and find out how much time he's been able to make in this push he's put here. It's been an absolute sprint, guys, for the last couple miles.
It's interesting you brought up age earlier, Johnny, in regards to Caleb Russell. That was something I used to hear in my 20s and think, like, you old guys are crazy. That's not a thing. Like, just go perform. You're an athlete. Now that I'm in my late 30s, I understand this is definitely very, very real. We're at that just over the halfway mark for Caleb. So do you think the sprint early by Caleb is going to hinder him this late in the race, or is he getting into the groove now? Or is it just thrown out the window, it's all up here, I'm going to block it all out?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as we can see, he's still there. He's kind of hanging out about that 10-ish seconds back, it looks like, that he gave up at the pit. But I think what we really need to see is Lyndon Snodgrass, to me, looked to be very close. Nice. Looked like he had put in a really good push. And now it's actually Ben Kelly who's gotten around Lyndon Snodgrass up to the number 3 spot. Mikey, you remember what I said a couple minutes ago off air? I said, I think we need to keep an eye out for the 530. I think he's going to put in a push, try to put it in the mix with these leaders up front, and he's doing just that right now. Again, another rider, tall in stature, really eats up those sandwiches. But look at this, not so tall in stature. Impressive ride for Mike Witkowski, still up inside the top 5 overall, sitting in that number 5 spot. These guys are all reaching the edge of exhaustion, and we've still just barely passed the halfway mark.
That's it, about an hour and 45 into it. And our leader out in front, Ben Kelly.
So we've got some lap riders working their way through here at the 6-mile marker. We know that our leaders have already come through. The top 5, Mike Witkowski in that 5th place spot, have come through. And now we're continuing to wait to see the rest of our XC1 class work its way through here.
So sitting here at the mile 6 here of the Moose Racing Wild Boar GNCC. There goes Ricky Russell making his way by now.
Yeah, there's your triumph rider. You talked about it. All right, Caleb Russell coming in, getting the pit there. You can see him taking some hydration, some fresh Scott goggles. They had him in and out pretty quickly, but it was enough that this man right here, Johnny Gerard, wrestles away the lead and puts in a sprint. He's trying to stretch it out. Josh Strang in the pits. Doesn't look like he's going to be a factor here today, but we're going to find out how this all shakes back when we come back to Racer TV after this.
On Track School is an online private school catering to some of the top athletes in the world. We offer a flexible schedule for students that are chasing their dreams and always on the go. We are an accredited K-12 school where students can graduate with a diploma. Scan the QR code or call us to book an appointment with one of our learning coaches to discuss your students' next steps.
We've been there since the very beginning.
20 left, the main event, the mud, the blood, the beer.
Organizing the industry and building champions. "100 years of defending your rights to ride into the future."
Community, family, teamwork. It's what we have stood on for over a decade. Hauling might be what we do at the surface, but it's much deeper than that. Because what you need matters. When you need a haul, give us a call at 724-852-4488. For 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year, we at JD Enterprises are prepared to serve you.
It takes commitment, passion, and endurance to make something great. Made by champions, for champions.
Welcome back to GNCC Live here on RacerTV.com. We have got a battle for the ages between Johnny Girard and Caleb Russell out in front. And, boy, FMF, obviously a huge part of GNCC, sponsoring some of the greatest riders in the world in off-road and in moto. And I think it was with the KTM pits, if I'm not mistaken. But we got to dive a little deeper on the contributions of FMF in GNCC racing.
Hi, Antti Kalonen here, Director of Racing for KTM Off-Road Group. We're a proud user of FMF products on all our racing programs. FMF has been our trusted product on exhaust systems for over 20 years, and the last 15 years we've worked even closer with them as a title sponsor for the KTM team. Their products are premier and align with our products as well. We are a ready-to-race company, and we look from our partners similar features, and FMF is providing excellent support for us, excellent product. We can trust their product on any condition that off-road racing is throwing at us.
Yeah, I'm stoked to run FMF. I ran FMF most of my life and on minis and bought exhausts growing up, and then eventually got on these big teams, and it's very cool to see. And FMF's one of the best in the business, and I'm proud to have it on my bike.
So FMF is a legendary brand here in America and worldwide. For us, racing here in America, it is our #1 choice. It truly means a lot for us, and we're so proud of partnering with the brand like FMF.
I feel FMF was a big part of me getting this #1 plate with the power and reliability, and just an awesome product.
And we're back. We're here watching the Yamaha Racing live drone. We know Johnny Girard's still up front. Last we saw looked like about a 10-second gap over Caleb Russell. Most of that gained in the pits. Caleb Russell has not been able to close that gap back down as Johnny Girard was a lap ago when Caleb Russell pitted. But we do know they're coming to the completion of lap number 4 here soon. And at that point, we are going to see if the racing action tightens back up at the front.
I mean, the way it's spread out right now, you got to think, okay, he gets in for a pit. That might just be enough time to where once the pit is over, these guys are side by side just like we had it earlier.
I had asked if they would be willing to wait for each other. Nobody thought it was a good idea.
Please, for the entertainment purposes.
I was just trying to throw it out there, and it looks like Johnny has been able to open up that gap just a little bit here. We're going to see if we can get a gap here, hopefully at the 9-mile marker from this camera. 151.08, Johnny Girard coming around that left-hand corner. Last we knew it was around 10 seconds. We're going to move a little further forward. So 151.16, he leaves this camera shot. How far back is the 5.57 of Caleb Russell? So we are at 10 seconds, 11 seconds, 12 seconds. Counting up, this gap continues to get a little bit bigger. Looking like now we are approaching that 20-second mark. There is 20 seconds, 21, 22. The gap really starting to open up now. Caleb Russell on screen. About 27 seconds is the gap as they come by here at the 9-mile marker. Johnny Gerard has really been able to put in a sprint, and now we know he does have to stop for fuel, but that should only take about 10 seconds, meaning he should be able to maintain upwards of a 15, close to a 20-second gap. And now Ben Kelly on screen looking like he's only about maybe 10 seconds behind Caleb Russell there, so he has really put in a push and gotten that much closer to the battle for the lead.
And I wasn't 100% sure, but it looked like it was Snodgrass in front of him.
Oh, he had gotten back around?
I thought Snodgrass was about a bike length in front of Ben Kelly. They were neck and neck going by. I saw the yellow gear that Snodgrass was wearing, so it might be wrong, but potential Snodgrass got back around Ben Kelly.
Well, we know Snodgrass been riding very well, had hit one of his best performances of the season here. And there is Mike Wachowski, so it makes sense. Might have been Snodgrass now back into the number 3 spot, back around Ben Kelly. Credit where credit's due. Snodgrass riding very, very well here today.
This would be, obviously a lot of attention on the XC2 and for all the right reasons in round 1. But, boy, if Snodgrass could hang on, this would be back-to-back XC1 podiums for him to kick off the season.
Johnny Gerard on screen, still looking pretty clean in that highlighter gear from Alpine Stars that both he and Ben Kelly are wearing today. Very bright. We saw yesterday in our ATV race, those guys absolutely just submerge themselves when they go through the puddles. When you ride an ATV, you throw water everywhere when you hit those puddles. Right now, Johnny Gerard still looking pretty clean out front, leading the way with about a 27-second gap over the 5.57 of Caleb Russell.
So that's why the ATV guys rock the black gear. I thought it was just the tribute to Bill Balance. Because this, I know a lot of guys will just throw the gear away after if we get a real rainy Palatka Wild Boar, it's like, it's done.
Yeah, you never get the stains out of it.
No.
It's the black soot that's in the ground here from...
So white gear is like, may not be able to reuse it.
XC2 leader on screen, and that shows you just how hard these XC1 guys are pushing. They have really just kind of picked up the pace and pulled away from... Is that Ashburn?
That's Barnes right there.
Oh, Barnes.
Cody Barnes.
Wow.
So Barnes...
Wow, he made up a bunch of time.
Yeah. Yeah, Cody's steadily improving here and rocking some of that white gear of Moose Racing. There is Gus Reardon. Gus falling just off the tail end of that 2-rider battle for the front of XC2. To your point, yeah, they start throwing away the gear. Some happy fans. I think I saw Bryce Neal making a couple people's days yesterday.
Okay, that is Cody Barnes.
Maybe I was wrong. Yeah, then that must have been.
Yeah, so that I'm pretty sure that was Jordan Ashburn that was right behind Grant Davis.
You're right, because Ashburn dropped back.
Yep, he has dropped back in the overall, but still, without the time correction, still ahead of Grant Davis. Grant Davis up in that 6th place spot in the overall, even though Ashburn all the way back in 11th. They're physically together on the racetrack once you factor in that minute or so between them on the start times. But 9 miles in, starting to string things out a little bit. Not only at the front, Johnny Gerard now able to open up pretty sizable gap over Caleb Russell on this during this 4th lap of racing. After Caleb pulls into the pit, Johnny makes the move for the lead, able to start to stretch it out. But even behind them, things are really, we've still got a few wheel-to-wheel battles. Looks like Snodgrass and Ben Kelly, very close as you picked up there, Zach. But the rest, we're just sitting here watching empty screen until another lap rider coming through. I believe the track is really starting to take its toll here.
Well, now I'm nervous after that Barnes call. It might not have been Snodgrass. So
no, I think you're right on that. I didn't see it, but we didn't see him. We know he was right there. He and Ben were, very close. Ben was ahead of him last camera shot we saw, but, Snodgrass very much on the charge, riding very well. Very likely could be him there. Now from our Yamaha Racing live drone at the from the FMF PowerPoint, the 11-mile marker, Johnny Gerard on screen. We'll see if we can get an official look at the gap here. 151.52 around that FMF banner. We'll look back and we'll see how long it takes to see the 5.57 of Caleb Russell appear on screen, try to chip away at that gap that Gerard has been able to open up.
Gerard, easy to spot from the body language of the number 1. He's up, got the very flat back there. You see Caleb Russell now popping in. What was that time?
Well, we were around the FMF banner. It was 55.51. So we're 30 seconds, basically, is what that gap is right now. And we look back and see, wait and see. That is Ben Kelly. See if we see Lyndon Snodgrass in the mix here.
Another miss.
No, there was another rider that came through right behind Caleb Russell, but it looked to be a lap rider to me as I was looking up and seeing Ben Kelly coming, there is Snodgrass. So I don't think
that is. Nope. Yeah. I think that's who I thought was Snodgrass because he was wearing that yellow gear. There is Linden.
So Snodgrass still there in the number 4 spot, coming out of Australia and on a charge, trying to close back up to Ben Kelly to fight over one of those 3 podium positions. We've got Johnny Gerard front, Caleb Russell in second, Ben Kelly in the number 3 spot, Linden Snodgrass on a charge, trying to make his way into that mix.
Man, Linden, heck of a start to the year for him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously wants to be on the podium, but I think even 2 top 5s is got to be a pretty exciting result. Witkowski. There it is, yep. Mike putting in a solid run as well. Going back to what I was talking about with Johnny, seems like he's up on the pegs a little bit more than we've seen Caleb throughout this entire race. Not even like an endurance thing, but just more of a style preference, standing up through a lot of those corners, whereas Caleb able to kind of plant in some of the apex of the corners. Just goes to show there's multiple ways to go fast around this course. Maybe another long-term strategy, just saving a little bit of energy here and there with Caleb taking the time to sit down when it makes sense. Obviously, sometimes you got to be up on the pegs and absorb the bumps here in Florida.
And that's kind of one of those things I was talking about with Johnny's height. I mean, here we see a rider finally taking that right line. We almost not seeing that at all. It looks like it might have been, is that Stu?
Testing some things out here.
It is. That's Stu Baylor taking that right line, and then just
Ricky
behind
Russell.
him, Ricky Russell, and then Grant Davis. So I think, and then is this Jordan? It is. Jordan Ashburn there on the number 3 Flat Rock backed gas ride. Jordan was up front early, having a little bit of a struggle here in the last. Now Gus Reardon putting in a charge. We saw he'd fallen back off the back of Grant Davis, looking like he is hooked up, trying to reel him back in to get back in the mix for that battle for the lead in that XC2 class.
So XC2 talk of the town in round number 1, even playing field here in the sands of Florida. XC1 guys able to stretch it out here. Which, to that credit, I mean, Grant Davis, normal race a couple years ago, if we had the XC2 guys still standing in Florida at position 6, we would be singing the praises of that rider. But the last couple of years, it's kind of changed.
Yeah, I mean, when you see those guys, the way they came out swinging at round 1, to see them sweep the top 3 overall and so many of the top 10 overall positions, it kind of sets an expectation. But there is a progression in GNCC, and I think these guys that are up front in XC1 have all been XC2 riders in the past. They've all been youth riders. They've all worked their way up through. When not to take anything away from the accomplishment that the XC2 riders, had it at round 1, but I think that was going to become a week in and week out thing.
Yeah.
Experience comes into play. These guys they're some of the best riders in the world. They have the experience. XC2 has the youth on their side, but when it comes to age and treachery, sometimes there's no match, and that's what we're seeing in the sands of Florida today. Johnny Gerard, Caleb Russell, Linden Snodgrass, Ben Kelly, Mike Witkowski, all able to keep themselves ahead of those XC2 riders, at least through 2 hours. Now, we could see, Davis and Reardon put in a charge and get themselves back up in contention for an overall podium. We saw it last year with Grant Davis, but right now, the XC1 showing themselves as the class of the field.
Johnny, let me ask you this. I talked to Jackson about this a little bit on Friday when we were just kind of bench racing as we watched the battle continue to unfold between Russell and Gerard. The emergence, I guess, call it what it is, basically factory support now from the time they're on like a micro all the way up into the pro ranks. We're seeing those kids get into the pro ranks, and suddenly when they say, well, when Jet Lawrence gets to the 450s, just wait, and then he's just that good when he gets there. Hayden Deegan is an example. Grant Davis on the GNCC side, they're just that good. As Gerard checks in with another lap completed, we'll see that gap. Do you think there's, I don't know if you call it a skills gap, but do you just think that the grooming of these young riders into their pro careers has better set them up to be successful when they reach that level, and that's why we're seeing the success they're having?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you've had the resources, you've had the tutelage, you've had so much mentorship along the way from the best in the business, it makes the transitions, they're never easy. I mean, these are the best riders in the world. This is some of the hardest racing in the world. But it definitely sets you up for a path where you kind of know you're doing the right things.
Yeah.
It's not as much guesswork. It's not as much trying to figure it out as it is just doing, what you've been doing for many years. Caleb Russell now coming through, and in that number 2 spot, 38 seconds is the gap. So we saw it at 10 seconds. We saw it open up to 27, then 30, now 38. Ben Kelly checking in that number 3 spot, and he is only 14 seconds behind Caleb Russell. Now we'll wait and see how far back Lyndon Snodgrass is in that number 4 spot.
Do we know if Ben is pitting?
I would assume, I do not, but I would assume that Ben's on the same pit strategy as Johnny Gerard. There is Snodgrass, so here comes your 4th place rider. Looks like he may have fallen off a little bit, giving up some time to the riders in front of him as he now checks in with 4 laps complete, 2 hours and 2 minutes of racing. This one is going to go the full duration, folks. We are going to see a 3-hour plus race here in the sands of Florida. Snodgrass checking in 34 seconds behind Ben Kelly in that number 4 spot. We'll be waiting and watching for the number 8 of the Phoenix Racing Honda of Mike Witkowski, rounding out the top 5 overall and top 5 in XC1. There he is. Who was that?
I think they were both lap riders.
Okay, for a minute I thought it might have been Ricky Russell, but I think you're right. It was a lap.
Mike Witkowski checking in.
35 seconds back of Lyndon Snodgrass.
So pretty good gaps across the board, but again, that pit strategy going to come into play. We'll see how much that shakes things up.
So I think both our 1st and 3rd place riders, Johnny Gerard and Ben Kelly, as we see Kelly on screen, one of the first shots we've had of the 530 kind of out in these field sections as he starts to get closer to that battle for the lead. Judging by these gaps, Johnny Gerard is likely in the pits right now getting fuel. There we go. He's actually just leaving the pits. You can see the water bottle hanging in a full sprint. He's going to see exactly what the gap is. So 58 kind of leaving our shot there. 03:58. 38 seconds is what it was. How much time did he give up in those pits? He is completely out of the pro pit area and into our water hole section out front here at the Hog Waller. Wow. This is where the hogs waller.
Yes, and Johnny is in that situation right now. Okay, I got the pit. That was the big question mark. Now it's run away and hide, and there is Caleb Russell. We're rusty on that one on the in the pro pits right there, trying to track him down.
Yep, he is. Looked like it was about 30 seconds, which makes sense if Johnny gave up about 8 or 9 seconds in the pits there. Back down to about 30 seconds as Caleb Russell came through that section of racetrack. But Johnny Gerard continuing to just absolutely open up this gap. Ooh, almost made contact with a lapped rider there. But he's got the lines dialed in, and he is pushing for all he's worth. Once he's out of sight, he feels like he's maybe got these guys on the ropes a little bit. He doesn't look like he's letting up. He's continuing to push the pace to try to get himself 1 lap closer to what will be next lap, a white flag waving, signifying only 1 more lap of racing here at the Hog Waller GNCC in Palatka, Florida. Johnny Gerard continues to lead the way.
Steve Hatch down there cheering him on. So yeah, Johnny Gerard now able to kind of get into his pace and stretch this thing out. And we'll see what Caleb's got for the last couple of laps, an hour of racing.
Crazy to think we still have an hour of this left.
I'm sure Caleb can agree with that.
Yeah.
I think all of these riders can agree.
No doubt.
Even if you're Johnny, he might be leading the way and pulling away, but he is still absolutely suffering right now. There's no question about that.
Yeah, no doubt. So Caleb Russell on screen, still holding solid there in that 2nd place position. Not seeing our 3rd place rider in the camera shot, at least for now.
Here is Johnny. Very tough mud hole coming up here in this section. These guys have the lines dialed in, but was out there this morning a little bit for the race. Guys absolutely buried themselves in what looked like perfectly good lines. So much could go sideways here through this section. But as you can see, Jackson, Johnny not even getting an inch off line. He's absolutely dialed in, hitting the lines, and making it through here without incident.
Yeah, Johnny Gerard, we
He's leading it. He's definitely got the advantage right now, but we are into that third hour of a grueling GNCC, and to get a rider's perspective on that, we had a chance to catch up with Gerard and talk about that as Grant Davis leaving the pits.
Yeah, I would say a lot of races, just keep it clean, keep it smooth. Don't, minimize the mistakes, minimize trying to tangle with the lappers. Just be smart, because it's yours to lose at that point. And then there's rounds like Camp Coker in Florida where you're like, man, I can do it. Man, I can do it. Man, I can do it. One more lap, 8 more miles, 6 more miles. So I guess it's depending on the track and how physically demanding it is, different in different types of races. But yeah, I would say something like Florida, man, I'm talking to myself, 20 plus times out there in the 3-hour stretch saying, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it, because that race is very mentally tough. But other ones like Big Bucks gets rough and is tough too. But I would say Powerline Park and Mason-Dixon and races like that where it's kind of slick and there's almost like a speed limit. Just kind of ride smooth and minimize the mistakes.
Well, there you go. There's the perspective of Johnny Gerard on that third hour of a grueling GNCC. And, well, what better guy to get his opinion than the man sitting in that number 2 spot of Caleb Russell. Sorry about that. Thought we had one with KR. All good.
All right, Johnny Gerard on screen leading the way. About a 30-second lead at last check. We'll look back and see what that lead is as they come through. Waiting on the 557 Ampro Yamaha of Caleb Russell in the number 2 spot. The 530 of Ben Kelly putting in a big charge, trying to get to the rear wheel of Russell to battle over that number 2 spot. Right now, Russell still has it, but Ben Kelly definitely making big moves in lap 4.
Yeah, Ben Kelly coming into this, going to be your points leader. A 4th place, able to get him that points lead here in the XC1 class. So he's going to have that reverse number plate and right on time, I believe. There he is.
Looking good, looking strong. You can see him riding those edges, trying to find some smooth ground. Caleb Russell really just kind of punching up the middle, bouncing through the whoops. Ben Kelly trying to find any smooth real estate anywhere between the banners and the string within that 25-foot grace area that we have on a GNCC race course. He is, definitely these guys are all beat up, and anytime you can find smooth running room, you're going to aim for it if you can.
Yeah, no doubt. Got a good technique there for Ben Kelly. It looked like he was really able to keep that machine settled in as he made his way through some of that rough sand there at that mile marker. But back on screen, going to be your leader, the number 1, Johnny Gerard.
Something interesting to think about, Ben Kelly sitting in the 3 spot right now. Not too far off of that pace of Caleb Russell in front of him, but if you go back, it's never too early to talk championship, right? Ben Kelly's got the reverse plate. He had a good finish. He had finished 1st in the class, 4th in the OA, a good points day. He's going to come away most likely here today, knock on wood. He stays in this position with another good points day, carries that reverse plate into round number 3, and we heard his teammate Gerard talk all season about, I'm in it for the long game. Wins are awesome. I want to make sure I'm on the podium every race and putting myself in position. We're kind of seeing right now Ben Kelly replicate that.
Absolutely, and if you're Johnny Gerard leaving, he didn't have a DNF. He just didn't finish in the top 20 overall, so he didn't score any points. But here today, we know GNCC 30 points. You get that for an overall win. Points are paid on the overall scale, not out of the class for the overall championship, and that's what these guys are really hunting. So you have to ask yourself, if you're Johnny Gerard, you leave round 1. What do I got to do? Win. 30 points, max points. All these guys obviously want max points, but the best way to do it is go out. You win 6 races in a row, whether it's Johnny, Ben, Caleb, Mike Wachowski, whoever it is, you make up 30 points by just winning 6 races in a row. It's that easy. Just go out and do it. Grant Davis on screen leading the way. Way easier to say from here. Grant Davis has now gotten around Lyndon Snodgrass, so a big jump up. He was actually 5th overall. That's a big change because he was 5th overall when they checked in
Getting radio reports maybe from Hollywood that Snodgrass might be having some bike issues.
So that is bad news for Snodgrass, but good news for Grant Davis. Back in that number 5 spot in the overall. Now we know he is 4th place in that overall. Here we see Liam Draper coming through on that Ampro Yamaha. So Snodgrass hopefully can continue to nurse that machine along to get it to the finish line, because he has had such a stellar ride here today.
So we'll keep our eyes on the 178 machine of Lyndon Snodgrass.
Is that Barnes there? Look to be Cody Barnes possibly. And that might have actually been Ashburn. We keep getting those two mixed up because then we see Reardon there. So that, we believe Reardon still in that number 2 spot, as he had about 31 seconds over Cody Barnes when they checked in 3 miles ago with 4 laps complete of racing. On screen, back to the front, Johnny Gerard leading the way from our Yamaha Racing live drone. Looking good out front, looking smooth. Opening up a gap after getting around Caleb Russell in the pits. Saw it 10 seconds, then 25 seconds, then 30 seconds, checking in with a 38-second gap at the completion of lap number 4. Very early on in lap 5 when he gets to the pro pits, stops, gets some fuel. Now we know he's got enough to get himself back to pace and continuing to stretch it out. 30 seconds is what it was when he left the pits. We'll see if we can get a gap on exactly what that is, but we believe it's upwards of 30 seconds.
And I believe that we're actually got the owner of Club MX down there standing by with Zach, where the KTM boys have been training.
Hey, thanks, guys. Yeah, down here in the pits with the owner of Club MX, Brandon Haas. Brandon, when we talk about Florida, we talk about training, and one of the best places to get some sand training is at Club MX. We've got some changes in the offseason with several riders joining the club crew. Talk a little bit about what's that been like, not only from their perspective, but you guys diving into the off-road world as well.
Yeah, you know, it's been awesome to see the platform KTM is giving their riders in general and allowing us an opportunity to dive into off-road racing. And really the most underrated, talented guys on dirt bikes is right here, right now. And it's been cool to see how good these guys are on moto and just all elements of racing. And yeah, the level of physical conditioning and the team components, and also just the grassroots of racing is still alive, and very cool to see. Yeah, I'm excited to keep learning more and diving in deeper.
Now, obviously, Club MX, not just several tracks, but a full facility, right? Everything from training to nutrition. Do you guys have to approach the off-road riders a little bit differently than you do your Club MX motocross and supercross team?
Yeah, I would say there's probably 50% of the program carries over, I would say, and then the other half is definitely catered to them. Cole Martinez is the trainer that heads that group with the 7 guys, and we hope to just keep building on it. We got some single track, 60 acres just set up for the off-road area, and then all the corner tracks, the motocross, so they actually get a very unique program, which I think is really cool that maybe not other people can have access to. But we also want to learn more and just keep helping these guys grow and build and just fine-tune them as athletes. So from nutrition to physical conditioning to on-the-bike technique training, and you know, all aspects of racing is what we want to help with. And yeah, we're just here to kind of dig in. This is our first go at it, and what a great group of guys to get started with.
Now, not only are you the owner of Club MX, you're a racer and a rider yourself. We've seen great success at the Loretta Lynn's Amateur National. Are we going to see Brandon Haas at a GNCC eventually? That's what I want to know.
I would like to race one, to be honest with you, just so I can experience and just have some understanding. Obviously, I can't at the level these guys are at, but just a little taste of it would be cool. Even for us building the trails and all the obstacles we want them to work on. Yeah, I will definitely race one sooner than later. I've been riding the trails while these guys are gone because they're no fun to ride with. They just humble you too much. But yeah, I definitely want to.
Well, Brandon, thank you for your time. Glad to have you. Welcome to GNCC Racing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Back to you guys in the studio.
Snowshoe.
Yep. We're waiting for you at Ironman.
Yeah, that's it.
Happy to have you out here. Cool thing that they're doing there at Club MX.
All right, guys, watching our time counter there in the upper left corner of the screen during that interview and seeing the riders come through, to me on screen looked to be about exactly that same 30-second gap for Johnny Gerard out front, and still that exact same 14-second gap back to Ben Kelly in the number 3 spot behind Caleb Russell. Interesting, though, when you, again, factor in Caleb able to make up some time. We know Ben Kelly pitted, or I'm sorry, we believe both Ben Kelly and Johnny Gerard. We got a shot of Johnny actually leaving the pit, so we know he did pit for fuel. We believe Ben Kelly did as well. I think the rider on the move right now is Ben Kelly because he's already made up that give or give or take 10 seconds that he would have cost himself in the pits, because he was exactly 14 seconds behind Caleb Russell before he pitted, and he's back to 14 seconds behind him now. So it looks like he is the rider on the move. The gap between Gerard and Russell seems to have stabilized right at that 29-30 second mark. So, and now, here's the big gap back to the riders behind. Now, we know Lyndon Snodgrass, or we've been told, Lyndon Snodgrass having some bike problems. Looking like maybe it's starting to shape up to be just these three left to fight it out over the top three overall podium positions.
Yeah, that's the way it's looking right now. Johnny, I got a question for you. You think that there's any chance that Russell will need to make another pit before this event is over, or do you think he's good to go?
I wouldn't think he would need to make another pit, but given the situation of where he's at, and as these riders have kind of locked themselves into these podium positions, it may not be a bad idea if he were to, say, want to get a drink, rather than stopping just for, or slowing down to grab a bottle, maybe a splash of gas, just for a little insurance policy. Another thing to note, and this isn't something that gets talked about a lot, most times the teams will, Mike Wachowski on screen, now your new fourth place rider with Lyndon Snodgrass dropping back. And so, yeah, I think we did miss Wachowski. So Grant Davis, still there is Grant Davis. So now Davis up to fourth place corrected time, fifth place physically on the track. That is your XC2 leader 6 miles in to lap number 5. They'll measure the fuel that goes in, so that they know how much they put in the can after they fuel the rider. They know what the tank holds. Snodgrass maybe having bike issues there, dropping a hydration bottle, but he's still looking strong, still rolling along and staying ahead of his compatriot there. I think, oh no, Liam Draper actually. I was going to say, I thought we were expecting Gus Reardon next, but Draper back on a charge, trying to close up the gap to get to the back of Snodgrass to battle over what would be fifth in that XC1 Pro class. They know how much fuel the bike takes. They know what they put in. They'll measure it afterwards and figure out what exactly that means. How much did they use? How much was left? Were we good to go 3 laps? Were we cutting it close? I'm sure the Ampro Yamaha team and FMF Red Bull KTM, they don't have to worry about it. They know they've already fueled both of their guys, we believe, a second time. They've got plenty of fuel to make it to the finish.
Going to bring it home. The piggyback question is yesterday we saw it with Walker Fowler and Bryson Neal, and I was anticipating, will Walker Fowler be happy with the second place today? He was, I don't know if happy was the right word or content was even the right word. How do you think Caleb Russell feels about perhaps finishing in that 2 spot today? That's a man that wants to win, but today is tough. I mean, today was different.
Man, I've known Caleb a long time. I've long since stopped trying to figure out how he's going to feel about even a win. I mean, I've seen him be just absolutely frustrated with the win if things didn't go the way that he felt they should have. He's very hard on himself. I think from the outside looking in, if he's able to maintain a second place position or even a podium, that's a huge jump forward. He battled and still continues to battle for lead. I mean, 30 seconds. We talked about this yesterday. You get to that minute mark, to me, that's kind of like lights out, game over. 30 seconds, you've still got a race on your hands. One little tip over, one rider kind of catching a second wind and the other rider dying off a little bit, you can lose sight of your pace, and 30 seconds can either be drug out or reeled back in a matter of just a couple miles, believe it or not. Once you get to that minute mark, it's just kind of that mental dagger. It's a dagger to the heart. Hey, this guy's a minute out on me. So hard to reel in. Unless you're coming from multiple minutes back and you get it down to a minute, now that's a different story. But when you see those pit boards, 30 seconds seems like a manageable gap. A minute, if you can get to that. I think right now we've still got a race.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I have no idea how Caleb Russell's going to feel
I understand.
About this. I mean, I think from the outside looking in, it seems like a pretty good day.
And it's always interesting. People will ask me not what was Walker's problem after the race with the interview, or what was Caleb's problem. He got a podium. Johnny, there's a big difference in a pro-level rider and a tenured champion rider that has more wins than anybody else, and they expect to win every time they line up on the line.
And I think maybe that comes back in a more dramatic way to what Caleb said about some guys are just they're happy to be in the race, they're content to be out there and be a factor and be involved, maybe be in the mix once in a while. he wants to win races. Yeah. But the reason why I say I don't know is I know Caleb said, hey, I'm coming back. I want to try to win these things. I believe I still can. But I think we all know there's a process to that. Sure. I can't imagine that anyone could have expected that Caleb was just going to come back in, start winning right away. Is that what he wanted? Absolutely. But you heard him say, hope is not a plan. I hope I'm still
that, by the way,
competitive. And there's a whole other discussion we can have about what exactly that means. Yeah. But this proves that his plan is working. Yes. Huge improvements from round one. He's in the race. He's absolutely a factor for the win today. May still get himself a win. So progress, not perfection.
Yeah. You guys nailed it on the head earlier. Watching, is that Gerard?
It is. Yep.
Watching Gerard come through. As far as any sport, motorsports, boxing, stick and ball sports, whatever, come back this late in their career or after that long away and had that kind of success. Like, the only guy you could probably throw in that conversation would be Michael Jordan, but he was in his 20s or early 30s at that time, and it was only about a year and a half away from professional sports. So this is something I don't think anybody's ever done at this level.
Yeah, and we see Johnny Gerard on screen, and we keep talking about this guy right here because I think this is, for me and for a lot of people, the big surprise today. Johnny Gerard, impressive today.
Yeah, very much.
But when you see the big number one on his back, I think that's what's expected.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he expects of himself. And I think for him today, doing his job. He's out there, he's leading, he's riding what appears to be, at least from 200 feet above the tree line, a perfect race.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him really make a mistake. He's just been spot on. And Ben Kelly really putting in a big charge here late. We've seen how dominant that man can be in the sands of Florida. One of the biggest wins we've ever seen in GNCC racing just 3 years ago here to round 2 in 2022. Going back to talk about that, he's on screen. I think that's Ben, maybe Johnny, hard to tell, same gear. He was just on another level, on another planet through 6 rounds in 2022. Not only did he win every race, nobody was close.
No, it was a runaway. And then the announcer curse came, and I started talking perfect season and ruined everything.
I don't think anyone could say that. But
we're still buddies. He doesn't hold any animosity. So
it's been a big charge back for Ben. Here's the thing. It's interesting to say that Johnny was a factor in the 2023 championship all the way down until the very end with a broken leg. And later found out that there was a whole bunch of other injuries still caused by that big crash in 2022. It wasn't until the end of the 23 season and almost on the eve of the 2024 season that they figured out exactly what he's all had going on, had the procedures done, took the necessary time off. And I think this is the first time we've seen since then a truly close to 100% or 100% Ben Kelly, and he's very much in the mix, and it's impressive.
And Mike, you talk about this all the time. Nobody's really 100%, I say with air quotes, but it's like the ability to actually feel at physical capacity, feel like you're able to give everything that you've got instead of, oh man, if my knee just wasn't bugging me, if my shoulder wasn't, bothering me on that final hour. It's incredible how much of a difference that can not only do physically, but for your mental approach as well.
Yeah.
One more thing worth noting. I keep talking about Ben's 2022 win. It slipped my mind. Ben won here in 2023. On a broken leg. On not a leg that he knew his leg was broken. And he won this race 2 weeks after Big Buck on a broken leg. This guy is capable of some special things here in the Florida sand, and it's not just us that are talking about him. Everybody knows Ben has got something special. Former GNCC champion. We actually got to speak with his teammate Johnny Gerard a little bit about Ben and how those two get on in the racing world.
Ben's an animal, and his injuries the last couple of years have really been a burden on him. But obviously he's XC1 champ, and then he came out swinging and went 6 for 6 till he got hurt. So he is dangerous, and he is very good at this type of endurance racing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do, and just being healthy and starting the year off on the right foot. It's cool to see, and he's a New England native and been a friend for most of our racing careers. So I'm pumped to have him back, and hopefully we can get up there and be 1 and 2, whatever that looks like. That would be pretty cool underneath the same rig. So I know that we got the speed and talent. So we'll just see how it plays out. Last lap, we're going for it, and we're, I'm fighting for money for my family now, so I got to buy diapers and stuff. Those aren't cheap, but no, I would say we're pretty friendly, and we'll race each other pretty clean. I don't think we'd be doing anything crazy or dirty like that, and you know, just depending on how you know, far we are into the year, or what the championship standpoint looks like and stuff like that. So I think it'll be pretty clean and good.
All right, well, there you go. Johnny weighing in on his teammate, Ben Kelly. Worth noting, both of those guys products of that Trail Jesters team, no longer active per se in GNCC. They still support many riders, but for a while there, they were actually a KTM support team. Entering into the fray with Josh Toth, who ultimately, Josh Toth and Ben Kelly at the same time, and then later bringing Ben Kelly, Johnny Gerard into the mix, as we see now Caleb Russell on screen in the number 2 spot. Guys, I didn't get a chance to check the clock there. I don't know if OPAG can go back, have a look at the clock, and see what the gap is. We'll wait. We'll watch back for the rider we've been talking so much about, the big tall man out of Harwinton, Connecticut. On screen, the 530, Ben Kelly, charging, trying to get to the rear wheels of his former trainer, former mentor, Caleb Russell. So we talked about the Trail Jesters aspect of this. As you see a left rider down there, 31 seconds is what we are told is the gap. So it really has kind of stabilized at that 30 seconds. You got to wonder, is that a case of Johnny just kind of managing his effort and not trying to continue to grow that gap, or has Caleb figured something out to be able to kind of match the pace that he wasn't able to match just a couple laps ago? Tell you what, this rider is ripping. Not one of our top riders, but shout out to this guy. We're 2 hours and 28 minutes into this.
That is Joey Crown, actually, former Loretta's racer. Yep, joining us.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't he a New Englander as well?
Couldn't tell you where he was from, but I know he was working with the Shoals for a while, and now is at south of the border in South Carolina, but does a little bit of training for the moto side of things.
He saw those jumps, and that was his moment.
Yes, he's ripping. So, yeah,
Racer TV got that. Joey Crown sending it. Very cool. I was thinking, man, this guy looks as though he's battling these guys for a podium position, but looks very good there. But yeah, interesting dynamic. Like I said, both of those guys, along with Josh Toth, coming up through that Trail Jesters team. Another interesting dynamic that we've talked about with Johnny and Caleb, but Caleb Russell right now sandwiched between
very good
two former champions who he was the trainer and coach during their championship runs, and now he's back in the mix and literally parked halfway between them. It's a cool storyline unfolding on the camera right in front of us.
That's very cool. Trying to get it done against the mentor, the coach. No pressure, boys.
This proves the saying, those who can't do teach, is not true.
That's a good point, yeah.
In all cases. In some cases, I think we could agree it is, but in this case, the teacher was able to teach because he knew exactly what he was doing. But now,
I'm always told those who can't do announce. So
that's also, I've always felt that way myself.
100% agree with that. Well, it's way easier.
Johnny, you could at one time.
Well, I don't want to anymore, and I can't. 47 years old coming up here in, what is today? 5 more days.
Oh.
So, yeah, we'll... I really like it in here.
Are we celebrating in Talladega then?
Absolutely, man. Let's do it. I've got a fan blowing on me. I've got great company in here. We've got water. I just had a cinnamon roll, a little mini one, just a little one. But this is so much. People keep asking, man, isn't there a favorite track? Don't you wish I have had no regrets. No desire. I know what it took even to race close to the elite level. Not battling for wins week in and week out like these guys do. But it takes everything you got, and it's way, way cooler to just watch from here. Racer TV gives us a great view, and it's comfortable. I like it.
Hey, you're still scratching the itch a little bit. You're riding around before the racing gets started, checking the track out a little bit, giving us that expert opinion. So you're still out there. You're still involved.
Guys, I could be wrong, but we got Mike Wachowski. Is this Lyndon Snodgrass putting a charge in to get back up to Wachowski? And is that Liam Draper now?
Yeah.
Draper's really charging. So that is 4th, 5th, and 6th place with Grant Davis in the mix as well. So that's 4, 5, 6, and 7 overall in some order with the time correction. And enter the chat, Gus Reardon, number 2 rider in XC2, trying to track down Grant Davis, your XC2 leader. These guys are all now starting to really find each other on the racetrack, push each other, and that pace is looking pretty intense out there, boys.
And all those guys talking Well, Gerard, I guess Gus Reardon in the top 5 here last year in the overall.
Riding style-wise, that looks to me to be Cody Barnes that we're seeing on screen. No, Ricky Russell. Tall, thin, Ricky. Triumph of Ricky Russell. So he did lose a few positions there. Liam Draper on a charge. Lyndon Snodgrass looking like he put those bike issues behind him. And now that battle for the top 5 in XC1. These guys are battling for a top 5 like it's a win, and I love it.
That number 217 was one of our front runners in the XC3 class off the start.
Yeah, not in the top 20 overall last lap, so I don't think he is. I think he's going a lap down. On screen, Johnny Gerard, number 1, working his way. This is the final few corners for we will see Ricky Towery with the white flag waving, meaning one more lap around this brutal, tough, challenging. What were the other words?
Gnarly.
Gnarly.
Gotta go gnarly.
Yeah. Hogwaller GNCC race course here today. Johnny Gerard still looking fresh, still looking strong, still pushing the pace. Quick shout out, we have 2 riders now inside the top 20 overall from that 258 class. Jojo Cunningham backing up round 1, now into the Caleb Russell on screen, checking in. Last lap it was 38 seconds. Guys, 23 seconds.
Ooh.
We saw some time made up there. Caleb Russell looking like he's pushing. Maybe the push from Ben Kelly is starting to drive Caleb Russell along. And with only 23 seconds, I've said it before, 30 seconds, pretty comfortable. A minute is the magic number. Anything less than that, you've got a race on your hands. We may have a race here in the final lap. Again, quick shout out, Jojo Cunningham, 18th overall. Gavin Simon, 19th overall. Those two 1.3 seconds apart for the top amateur position.
Ben Kelly checking in.
Ben Kelly, whoa, big change there.
Yeah.
37 seconds back to Ben Kelly from Caleb Russell. You would have to assume something had to have happened to Ben in that section of racetrack because he was charging along and almost looked a little ginger coming through the finish line. May have had a crash. Hopefully he's okay, was moving, but did not seem to have the same intensity that he did just a few miles ago, guys.
Well, we talk about Wild Boar being a beast all its own, right? This is a round that they highlight on the calendar. In your top 3, they have dominated Wild Boar for the last 5 years, which is a crazy thing to think about. We thought we'd never see Caleb Russell back out of it, but Caleb has won Wild Boar 4 times. BK has won here 3 times, and then Johnny Gerard grabbing a win here as well. So these guys know how to have success out here in the Florida Sands. And the 2 that have probably done it the most out of anybody, Caleb Russell and Ben Kelly, 1st and 3rd, with Johnny Gerard trying to add another Wild Boar win to the list.
Guys, we don't get to see all of the action despite the fact we have a lot of cameras, we have this drone. My question looking at this, Johnny Gerard still appears to be charging very hard. Guys, looking at the lap times, Johnny didn't slow down. Caleb Russell sped up. 31:06 for Johnny Gerard and Caleb Russell with a 30-minute 50 seconds. Ben Kelly 31:13. So Johnny Gerard and Ben Kelly kind of still keeping the same pace. Somehow Caleb Russell seems to have picked it up here, and that's something maybe we weren't anticipating.
He's 35. It took him a while to get warmed up.
Well, I mean, guys, it would take me like 2 laps. It didn't take me 2 hours and 34 minutes. I'm not trying to make a storyline here. It would take me a while to get warmed up, and I learned that I had to warm myself up with a exercise bicycle, going for a jog, something before the race. I couldn't just go to the starting line and take off from cold. But yeah, I didn't take 2 hours and 30. Our races were only 2 hours on Saturday. So Caleb Russell on a charge. Johnny Gerard still out front, and that lead still 23 seconds, pretty comfortable. But you hear that Ampro Yamaha 450 revving out like that. I think this guy still thinks he's got a chance.
Yeah, I think he absolutely does. This is where we were talking about the difference in being a pro rider and a guy that's got more wins than anybody else under their belt. The guy's just not going to give up.
Well, and that willingness to suffer, too, right? He's not going to suffer any more than on this final lap, and I truly believe that Caleb believes he will suffer more than anyone else. He's probably banking on the fact that Johnny may be a little confident with the gap that he's built up, thinks maybe he can sneak up on him. I mean, yeah, without a doubt, I don't think we're going to see Caleb Russell lift until he crosses the checkered flag.
Yeah, I mean, given that gap, I think Johnny's got to be pretty flawless here. I mean, no mistakes, can't get stuck behind too many lappers, and Johnny's perfectly capable. And You talk to Johnny Gerard, and he's always very adamant. You know, I try to poke the bear with him a little bit, and like, man, who are the guys you know you need to finish in front of? And he's like, I'm not really worried about them. Like, I'm worried about myself. It's me against the track and my own expectations. So, you got ice in his veins, Johnny Gerard.
Yeah, and I think now we see Caleb Russell on screen. We kind of jumped there, so I lost track of where we're at, but I think it's about 22 seconds, somewhere in there. So around that same 23. OPAG is going to get it for us, folks. Our producer, Adam Gordon, always on it, getting us the gaps when we ask for them. But to me, man, this is opinion stuff, and I hate to do it. I think 20 seconds to told, so about 3 seconds less than it was just a few miles ago. I think from what I've seen, and I don't know all these guys in and out, but what we see on the racetrack and what I've seen off the racetrack, I think the 4 toughest guys on the racetrack overall, not saying on any given day, somebody else may not have a superhuman effort, but that have proven it time in, time out over a period of time, Johnny Gerard, Caleb Russell, Ben Kelly, Stu Baylor. Yeah. I think those are the guys, and these other guys are all tough. They're all gnarly. They're all brutal. You know, but these are the guys that really kind of just seem to find more consistently than their competitors. And it's 3 of those 4 guys are the top 3 overall. Yep. It just speaks volumes about the conditions today and how tough this racetrack is. You know, a lot of guys will find that later. And another rider that you can't leave out of that, I mean, at his peak, Josh Strang, even just a few years ago, you know, having some bike issues today, but he was a guy that, go ahead, count him out. And the very next race, he's back and he's winning races. And all of these guys are capable of it. But to be able to do it week in and week out is something that it's just such a short list of guys that have ever been able to do it. Looking over the shoulder, I see that's one of our XT2 riders, not one of our leaders. We know we've got a big battle coming up here on screen soon. Mike Witkowski, Liam Draper, Lyndon Snodgrass. In that mix, also Grant Davis and Gus Reardon, and those guys have checked in now with 5 laps complete. Grant Davis still leading the way, 24 seconds ahead of Reardon. And when we talk about those gaps and those 3 guys out front, 2 minutes and 54 seconds back to the 4th place ride in XC1 of Lyndon Snodgrass. So almost 3 minutes from Ben Kelly back to, we know Lyndon had some bike issues, but he's been able to charge his way back up. That's where you see that first big gap open up. I mean, 2 minutes and 54 seconds. We saw that yesterday, too. It looked like, is that Ricky Russell on screen?
Getting some encouragement from the fans here in Florida.
Johnny Gerard, 3 miles in, charging, no goggles. Hit that. A lot of guys will do that, especially on the last lap of like a tough race like this. A little more airflow, kind of freshen them up a bit. 39.25. Guys,
we got a race.
Ho, 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 ho.
We got a race.
Eat to win. We're win to eat.
I got about 15 seconds in that camera shot.
Yeah, sounds like our spotter kind of confirming that 14, 15 seconds. And while, okay, now you talk about some of the guys doing that on the final lap, opening up, get a little more airflow. Caleb still got the goggles on. Is he able to charge just a little bit harder? Like, is that going to hinder the number 1 at all?
It won't hurt Johnny unless Caleb gets around him. If Johnny,
it's bad. Yeah.
If Caleb's able to get around Johnny and Johnny doesn't have goggles on, that's tough, man. You're trying to dodge that roost. You can duck your visor all you want, but the sand is just brutal on the eyes. If you're Johnny Gerard, to me, that's a decision you make. And it could be a thing where maybe you splashed him, but if he chose to take those goggles off for the airflow, you're committing to the fact, I'm going to lead the rest of this race. I'm not going to be worrying about a rider in front of me roosting me. And if Caleb Russell can get around, that's going to present a huge problem for Johnny Gerard, but he's still got to get there. He's still got another 15 seconds he needs to make up to even get to the rear wheel. And if you think Johnny Gerard is going to give up without a fight, you got another thing coming. But I got to say, if there's one guy I don't think I'd want to be behind me right now, it's the 8-time champion.
All right, so we were getting way up with that Yamaha Racing live drone. I'm going to try to show you the gap. We just saw Johnny exit out of screen.
So that's not Caleb
one of our
Russell.
lap riders there. So we'll watch and wait.
That's Caleb Russell. Guys, I have it still at about that 14-second mark, just kind of roughly, because we don't have an exact point to count off of, but it seems to have stabilized. But Caleb Russell's on a charge, and Johnny Gerard throwing everything he has at it to try to keep him at bay, not let him get close enough that he can see him, because, in my opinion, I think if once Caleb can see him, it's not to say the race is over, because they still got to race it out, but once Caleb can see him and they're in the same section, he will get to his rear wheel. And it would be the same if it was Johnny chasing Caleb. When you make up that type of gap, barring a mistake or a lapped rider getting in the mix, it drives you. You're thriving off it. Again, it's that mental draft we've talked about. But right now, he's still not close enough.
Yeah.
He can't see Johnny. Even though he's getting pit boards, he's right there, you almost start to question, are these guys just goading me on? Are they trying to push me? Is he farther ahead? Once he sees him, it's like a waving red cape for a bull. He'll be charging, and Johnny's throwing everything he can at it, and it's fun to watch. I did not think we were going to see this kind of action on the last lap of racing.
We're here for it. Florida, round 2. Round 1 was all about the XC2 class getting the overall. Round 2 is about the defending champ and the former champ. And, yeah, we got that one. Yeah, Johnny Gerard. And, Johnny Gerard, no goggles out in front. Caleb Russell, goggles on, charging. Last we saw about 14 seconds, that gap. So
I think
developing.
So we're watching there, and I think that's Caleb in the center of our screen. I must have missed Johnny. I was looking at Mikey. That's my problem. Got to keep my eyes on the screen. But we'll see if we can get a visual on Johnny, get a gap. Man, it's awesome to have this Yamaha Racing Live drone. Maybe we'll even get to see a wheel-to-wheel battle for the lead, but I just wish we could get rid of all these leaves on the trees. It'd be great if
just
we
move
could
them to the side for a little bit.
Every part of this racetrack is so crucial right now. These guys fighting for every inch, every millisecond.
Liam Draper now without the goggles.
That is a rider that's really been on a charge up to the 8th place overall position. And we know he's higher than that because when they checked in, he was actually behind Lyndon Snodgrass and Mike Wachowski, and he's definitely ahead of Snodgrass now on screen, and that is Wachowski. So Liam Draper, the man on the move, has gotten his way around Lyndon Snodgrass and Mike Wachowski, moving them up, we believe, to around the 6th place overall spot. Worth noting, Grant Davis, Gus Reardon, 4th and 5th overall after time correction with 5 laps complete. Just to give you an idea, those guys running about a 32-minute and 20-second lap time. Everybody on down from Gus Reardon was, look at that. Liam Draper with a 31:48 last lap. So he was over a minute faster than most of the riders that he's battling with right now. But again, the only rider in the sub-30 range that lap, Caleb Russell, 30 minutes, 50 seconds. Johnny Gerard, 31:06. Ben Kelly, 31:13. The only other rider, as we pointed out, Liam Draper, 31:48. Everybody else in the mid to high 32s and then up into the 33s. So the pace, the heat, the sand whoops really taking its toll, but this one's getting ready to work its way down to a checkered flag waving. Will Johnny Gerard be able to hold on to it? Can Caleb Russell reel him in? Ben Kelly, we know, gave up some time in those final few miles of lap number 5. Seems to have stabilized. Doesn't look like he lost any more time there to the 3-mile mark, but he doesn't look like he is got the juice right now, or if something happened, to go with Caleb Russell on this charge that he's putting in, trying to catch Johnny Gerard.
Thought I might have caught a glimpse of Johnny in the top side of our screen. Can't quite confirm it, but Caleb pushing hard.
Almost, it looked like he stopped for another bottle there. Did he take one from... It was hard to tell, but it almost looked like he grabbed a drink, which to me is surprising. 15 minutes left, and he's still trying to stay on top of that hydration.
Watch and wait here at the 6-mile marker, and once again, the lap riders could play into this one. There is your leader, Johnny Gerard.
Whew, embracing it, no goggles.
45-45 through those trees. Let's see.
It's within shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's
within shot.
I think that's definitely less than 20 now.
It's still right at that 15
15 mark, yeah.
They seem to have stabilized. We saw it was 23 seconds at the finish line. We saw it down around 14. OPAG had it, and now it's 16 seconds. So Johnny able to pull. We're talking about 2 seconds here, but those seconds so crucial. Big. Caleb Russell wanting to see those numbers on the pit board come down. Johnny Girard desperately wanting to see that number get bigger. He does not want to see Caleb get any closer. And what they're both fighting right now is just that idea that Johnny doesn't want Caleb to see him, and Caleb desperately wants to catch a glimpse of Johnny Girard. All right, Ben Kelly on screen now. There is your third place overall rider. Definitely has given up about that same 40 seconds-ish. Maybe it has grown a little bit, but he's charging, still looks good. He has a big, big, big gap in the overall over Grant Davis, who's the fourth place rider with the lapse time. Mikey, 2 minutes is what Grant Davis is behind on time correction behind Ben Kelly, so that means near 3 minutes on the racetrack. I think barring incident for any of the top three, this is your top three overall as they run.
So taking a look at our specialized race recap, still got a little less than the last lap here to go, but this is where we've gotten so far. Coming into round number 2. Put a little hot sauce on it, the starting line. Riders fighting for that Landers KTM holeshot award. Coming out in droves. Ben Kelly there with that reverse plate coming into it with some confidence. As the race wore on, there he is. The number 1, Johnny Girard checking in.
Caleb Russell making the pass. Johnny Girard in the pits. This was the first lead change that we saw. Caleb Russell was actually leading early. Then Johnny Girard wrestled it away. Caleb Russell gets it back in the pits. Now here, 1 lap later, shoes on the other foot. Caleb Russell comes in. We see Johnny Girard around the outside and start to open up a gap.
Yeah, it's just been these two throughout. Then Johnny Girard, as he's able to put that gap on, and we saw it up over the 30-second mark. And here late, though, it is down to about 13, 14, 15, 16 seconds in that ballpark. And this one just might be a barn burner when we get down to the nitty-gritty. We'll have to see. Can Johnny Girard hold off the former champion and coach of Caleb Russell, or will Caleb Russell overcome and take first place in his first win of the year? We'll be right back.
Everywhere but the seat. The seat is leather.
Alan, we get it. You love your bike. We do too. That's why we're America's #1 motorcycle insurer. But do you have to wedge it into everything?
What? I don't do that. This reminds me of my bike. The Wolf was about the size of my new motorcycle. Have you seen it, by the way? Happy birthday, Grandma!
Really?
Look how the brushstrokes follow the line of the gas tank.
Hey!
Brought my +1. Jamie.
Every generation believes they've invented the best way. With age comes wisdom. We've come to realize that every piece of knowledge is learned, passed down from those generous and patient enough to teach.
Take a look.
Legacy. It's not about leaving something behind to be remembered by. It's realizing that the future lies within the next generation.
Let's call it a night. All right.
The nature of true progress is humbly building something bigger than yourself. Rocky Mountain ATV MC. This is our legacy.
And welcome back to GNCC Live here on RacerTV.com. Day 2 of live coverage on Racer TV. And boy, if today and yesterday have been any indication, you guys are in for a treat the next couple days. We'll talk a little more about that at the end of the show as we head to Daytona. But right now, it is all about the Wild Boar GNCC, and that man right there, the goggles are off, Johnny Girard, setting the pace out in front and trying to maintain that gap. It was 16 last time we saw the 5.57. What is it going to be now when we see Caleb Russell peek through the trees? There he is, still charging.
Looks like about 17. Yeah, 17 seconds. Oh, you see Caleb Russell almost ending up in the palmettos there. Quick adjustment, and that shows you. I think both these guys right now, this is everything they have, sprint pace. Johnny Girard desperately trying to keep Caleb Russell behind him. Caleb Russell doing everything he can to try to reel Johnny Girard back in. 23 seconds is what it was at the completion of lap number 5. Now out on our final lap, we've seen it down to about 14 seconds. Looks like it's back up around 17. And again, these guys fighting for fractions of a second at this point.
Down to the nitty-gritty, 2 hours, 52 minutes into it. It's going to be a 6-lap race when it's all said and done. Johnny, Zach, I think this is going to be one that we do those post-race interviews. These guys are going to, it was, I rode a dirt bike today. I mean, it's just, they are leaving it all out on the track.
Well, I think back to my first year 2 years ago, round 2 here, and Ben Kelly running on a broken leg, came off, stepped off the bike, and just, boom, on the ground. He was sitting there, and I'm like, I can't interview this guy right now. I don't even know if he's conscious. And he's kind of sitting there, and his eyes are half rolling back. Yeah. They have a great interview still, but it just goes to show, talk about giving 100%. They give it all. There is nothing left at the end of this race. Going to go the full 3 hours, maybe even, and then some, as they go through that 1,000-mile acres sign. And, I mean, this is, especially with this type of situation, Johnny out front, Caleb pushing as hard as he can. These guys, there's nothing left in the tank. There's not going to be a half a mile to try to get your bearings together. There's going to be nothing left when they cross the finish line.
And we obviously talking about Girard and Russell out in front. Ben Kelly, got that reverse plate coming into today. And if he can stay right there, going to be your points leader coming out of today, will take that away from the XC2 guys of Nick Defo, Josh Toth, Angus Reardon. A great day for Ben by all means.
Watching the number 1.
There is Ben Kelly on screen, looking like he's a little over a minute behind Caleb Russell now. So he was down to 14 seconds a lap ago. Caleb Russell putting in a push to try to catch your leader, Johnny Girard, has extended his gap over Ben Kelly, but Kelly still, at the completion of lap number 5, a lap ago, 2 minutes 54 seconds over the nearest rider behind him, who at that time was Grant Davis. In the XC1 class, it was Lyndon Snodgrass, 2 minutes and 54 seconds behind. We now know that is Liam Draper, last we saw, as he had made the pass on both Witkowski and Snodgrass.
Hey, good to see Josh Strang was able to get back out on track.
Showing a lot of heart out there. No points to be gained for him, at least a lap down, but still out there. Team manager and racer, trying to continue to shake down those beta machines. They've run very well at round number 1, and making sure he's got all the iron kinks worked out as we go back to racing just 6 days from now in Talladega, Alabama.
New track, new facility. Johnny, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, is it just like an even playing field? We've been to a lot of these places many, many times. Guys kind of know the lay of the land. What's it look like for you when you head to a new facility?
I mean, I think there's a little bit of excitement anytime you go to a new facility, but also a lot of uncertainty. You just don't know what to expect. Bike setup sometimes can be a question coming into the weekend, but I think there's definitely going to be a little bit of extra hype because it's Talladega, baby.
Yeah,
and, a lot of, I'm sure a lot of Talladega Nights references, Ricky Bobby. Yeah. It's going to be an exciting weekend of racing, and I'm surely looking forward to it.
I've already bought my Big Red. That's all I'm saying.
Oh. And if you don't chew Big Red,
you probably should.
You should. I think that's how it goes.
I'm going to have to get one of those Wonder Bread coats.
Oh, yes. My goodness, Old Spice.
A lot of sideburns I'm expecting next weekend.
Johnny Girard on screen, leading the way. About 18, 19 seconds in that last camera shot. He had stretched it back out. Caleb Russell reeled him in, got it down to about 14 seconds at one point. We were talking about if Caleb Russell could possibly get sight of Johnny Gerard. Johnny Gerard responding with a charge that opened that gap up just a few more seconds, and that is where it is right now. Still about 3.5 miles of racing action left, and we're going to settle this one in a matter of just a few minutes. And as you can see on screen, 2 hours and now approaching 57 minutes into this one. This one will go the full 3 hours plus, which in the sands of Florida is a little bit extra.
We like it. That's what we're here for. Got the money's worth.
3 hours feels like 7.
Yeah. 2 hours, 57 minutes on the clock. 6-lap race when it's all complete. Some lapped traffic for our pro riders when they roll through.
These guys are happy they got lapped.
Yeah,
they didn't see a 2-lap, or they may have seen a 2-lap, but they probably didn't see a white flag. Right. And now they're just going to, when they come through, they're going to get a checkered flag, and they're most likely going to be pretty happy to see it. Do a quick top 20 rundown. Liam Draper on screen also looking like he has removed those goggles as well for a little extra. It says plus 12 all in, so he's got last check 12 seconds over the rider behind him, which is this gentleman right here, Lyndon Snodgrass, still charging. Johnny Gerard on screen at the 11-mile marker, and you can see getting a little risky, man. He's trying to squeeze every ounce of speed out of that FMF Red Bull KTM, doing everything he can to continue to maintain that gap over Caleb Russell on the 5.57. Oh, Johnny Gerard is down, folks. Johnny Gerard is down, picking up the machine, giving up valuable time. He will still maintain the lead, but gave up a good 5-7 seconds there.
Oh, boy. So things getting interesting, getting dicey. Lapped rider there was that was some cognitive awareness to say, oh, hey, that's the number one of Johnny Gerard. I know you're going to pass me right back. Go ahead, buddy. So Gerard back on the throttle.
That'll get the heart rate up.
That is it's gonna wake him up as if he was asleep to begin with. But Caleb with no way of knowing that. We'll see.
He's just gonna have to rely on those pit boards, see what the gap is. It looked like it was about 20 seconds. I anticipate that with that crash, we could probably see it back down around that 15-second range if we get an opportunity to see what that gap is. But don't know if we did see that. I think we saw Caleb Russell come through this section while we were on the drone with Johnny Gerard picking his bike up, because here is Ben Kelly, who we know was about a minute behind Caleb Russell as they worked their way through about a mile ago. Yep, that's a lapped rider back there. We'll try back again from the Yamaha Racing live drone, see if we can get a shot of the leaders and find out exactly what that gap is.
So, go ahead.
Johnny Gerard hitting the ground, giving up valuable seconds. The biggest thing for him, if he recovers quickly, he had about a 20-second gap. Not the end of the world, but sometimes one mistake can lead to another.
Yeah.
If that heart rate gets up, you start to panic. He knows Caleb Russell is close, but at the same time, he knows he's got enough of a gap that as long as he doesn't make any more mistakes with less than now, probably about 1.5 miles of racetrack left in front of him, he may have this one in hand.
Yeah, Johnny Gerard trying to capture his first win of the season, trying to hold off Caleb Russell, who also looking for his first win of the season. And we'll see how this plays out. I think we got a replay we're going to show you of that little get-off there by Johnny Gerard.
Just cross ruts, it looks like. Leans a little too far to the left side, possibly losing, starting to lose his balance, not able to correct it. But you can see quickly picking the machine up and very quickly back on, just losing a couple of seconds.
And again, I love the lap rider right there. Go ahead, Johnny. You get out there. Not going to get in the way. So cost him a little bit of time, and there we are up over the 3-hour mark. So the boys, you guys got bonus racing at home here today. We're in overtime.
Gerard just wringing that thing out. Absolutely still just abusing, skimming across the top of the sand. It was Jesse Ansley, unfortunately, pushing his machine to the finish line. A rider that was inside the top 5 in that XC2 class, now dropping out of the race as he will be done for the day here.
Tough one for Jesse, Florida native. Always expect to see him do well down here. So Gerard still moving methodically through. This Wild Boar GNCC.
sitting out in front, looking like he's going to be able to take home his first win of the year and hold off Caleb Russell.
Somewhere in those trees, 15 to 20 seconds back, we believe is the 5.57 of Caleb Russell, still charging, trying to close up the gap, but running out of time, running out of track. Johnny Gerard putting in a masterful ride here through the final miles of racing, trying to put the finishing touches on this one.
Man, looking so good through there. Making it look easy this late into the race for Gerard. So, again, Gerard, Russell, Ben Kelly, Grant Davis, last time he checked in was in the 4th spot in the overall, and Angus Reardon in 5th in the OA. They would be 1st and 2nd as far as the XC2 is concerned. Snodgrass, a great start for him. Had some struggles late and sounded like maybe some bike issues that maybe got worked out or were worked out. And another pretty solid day for Mike Wachowski to this point as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Snodgrass having those bike issues when looking like he was making a run possibly for a podium. Having those issues, getting it sorted out and back up solidly inside the top 10 overall and still continuing to battle, trying to put himself in a position only about 10 seconds behind Liam Draper over that 5th place spot in the overall at our last camera shot. And this actually is Lyndon Snodgrass on screen. To the right, there he is. And then it's Gus. No, that was Grant Davis, I believe.
I think so.
It was. And don't know if Liam Draper already came through there at the 11-mile marker, but our leader's now approaching the finish line. Johnny Gerard just a few more turns, and he can put the final touches on the win here today. Looking good, looking strong. Lurking back there somewhere is Caleb Russell, looking like he is running out of time now with just a few corners remaining, Mikey.
Yeah, Johnny Gerard been pretty sensational today. We saw some back and forth between him and Caleb Russell. And, boy, the gloves are off for Johnny Gerard. The goggles are off, literally, as he is now bringing it home into the finish. Gets the checkered flag from Ricky Towery. And a big congratulations. And the visor missing, probably from that crash we saw. So Johnny Gerard earning it today in some bonus racing, and that right there, ladies and gentlemen, just speaks to how, grueling, demanding GNCC is. And there's Carrie Jo Russell with water. 8 seconds was the gap. And look at that, a fist bump, a pat on the butt from Caleb Russell. And Caleb's on his feet, but even KR looks a little woozy right there.
That was a battle.
That was a hell of a ride by both of those men.
He's talking about the crash right there. I tucked the front. That's where he lost the visor. Just about 2 miles of racing to go with about a 20-second gap. He tucked the front, was able to get up and going, but that ultimately brought the battle down right to the finish line. 8.2 seconds is the margin of win for Johnny Gerard. We'll wait now. Ben Kelly should be coming in any moment now. He was about a minute behind Caleb Russell last we saw, and I think that is not Ben Kelly. He's not due yet, but he's due here just about any moment. So, Ben Kelly checked in. 44 seconds behind. Our top 3 overall have checked in. Ben Kelly, there he is, the 5:30, 3rd place overall on the day. A very solid ride. Looking like he's favoring that right hand a little bit. That may be a factor in why he gave up a little bit of time there towards the end of the race. You can see him looking down at it. Not hard for these guys to punch a tree on their way by. When you get a little close to those Florida pines, they can be aggressive.
But Ben, hey, post-race looks good. He said, I had 3 huge crashes. We heard that.
Oh, that's blood coming through the top of the glove, it looks like there.
Knuckle right there on the pinky. Racer TV, Mike down there, I believe, getting the shot.
Guys, we just received word from Race Direction via OPAG that Lyndon Snodgrass will be assessed a penalty for receiving fuel outside of the designated pro pit area. We'll leave that to Race Direction. We know in the past that's typically a 1-position penalty, I believe, unless they gain a position by doing so, and then there will be additional penalty positions on top of that. But we'll leave that to Race Direction. It's a very clear rule with a predetermined penalty in the rule book. So Unfortunately, Lyndon Snodgrass making a mistake, pitting outside the designated pro pit area and costing himself a position. There we see Cole Martinez. There we see the entire Girard family. +1, we see Ziggy there to the left, and new baby Girard on Selena. Johnny sitting down, getting himself
putting out the vibe right there.
He's saying, hey, I got my legs crossed.
That's the
got the job done. Now we're going to get recuperated because we got to do this again in 6 more days.
That's very true. Got the Burt Reynolds pose right there for Johnny Girard. Man, what a race. Josh Strang checking into the finish line, the number 7. And don't know how far back Strang was. Was he out of a? Did he get lapped? Because I know he was in the.
He did.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, I knew he was in the pits for a pretty extended period. So, obviously, letting these guys get themselves cooled off and rehydrated, and then we will jump in there and get an interview with them. All hands on deck. Look at that. Even Big John getting in the mix, helping them out.
We do still have to wait and see, as still refreshing. Still only the top 3 overall have checked in, and that gives you an idea of just how far out front those top 3 had gotten. So the margin of victory, 8.2 seconds. Ben Kelly, another 44.4 seconds back in that number 3 spot. So about 51 seconds separating your top 3 overall. We still wait for not only the rest of your top 5, top 10 in the XC1, but also that battle down to the finish between Grant Davis and Gus Reardon. Looked like Grant Davis had it in hand from the last camera shot we saw, but we cannot call these things until they're over, folks. We'll do our best to see if we can get a shot of Grant Davis. We see some cheering coming to the finish. Is this Liam Draper? It is. Liam Draper crosses the line in 4th place in the XC1 class. Has he done enough? Has he extended that gap over Grant Davis enough to maintain that overall position? Oh, there's Lyndon Snodgrass, so that's 5th. And there is Grant Davis, your XC2 winner, and that will put him in that 4th place overall position. So a big, big win here today for Grant Davis. 4th overall and XC2 winner. We'll hopefully see if we can get an update on the rest of our XC2 podium. We do not think that Gus Reardon would be too far behind. Grant Davis missing a front number plate. This guy looks like he was out there in a war today, Mikey.
Yeah, absolutely. Just depleted, absolutely depleted is Grant Davis. Getting himself rehydrated. Get some water down the back. Not uncommon to see the guys get done in the race in Florida, rip the boots off, get some airflow through there, and get the body temperature cooled down. So sitting in as much shade as you can. Great, great ride there by Grant Davis. And some lucky fan out there on the track is going to go home with a number 1 plate from that XC2 class, courtesy of Grant and his hard work here today. But boy, just a great, great ride. Good day for the KTM boys as well.
And looks like we now have a few more riders checked in. Gus Reardon checks in 5th place overall, another top 5 overall for him. Throw his hat in the ring for overall points with a
very good point.
4, or actually I guess he was 8th at round 1, but here we go. It sounds like our man down there has Johnny Girard ready to go and talk about his big win here today. We're going to let him have a seat. He did the hard part. Now we'll let him rest up. He's got to race again in 6 more days. Zach Herron with our winner, Johnny Girard.
All right, guys, now I do want to make it clear. Johnny was ready to stand up, but I said I had been working hard, so I needed to take a seat. Johnny, man, talk about leaving it all out on the track and giving 100%. A dogfight. There's no other way to put it. Take us through that race.
Yeah, for sure. Started off smooth and kind of just riding behind the guys. Then me and Caleb got out front, and he put in a hot lap, and I pit right before that and tagged on to him, and then he pit. And I put in a hot lap and kind of stretched it back out because I had to pit twice. Pit, and then had a little lead, and he chopped it right down to 7 seconds going to the last lap there. And I tucked the front the last lap and flipped over and got up, and man, I gave it everything I had. And yeah, I'm in blackout mode right now. I can barely see, so did good.
Johnny Gerard, enough said. Left it all out on the track. Your XC1 winner, Johnny Gerard.
Well, guys, tough, brutal.
Yeah. Family. Family.
Yeah.
Had his kid with him. How about it?
Wow. He is that. There was nothing left.
No,
that was what's it take to win? Just everything you got.
Just everything. Just a resting heart rate of 180 beats per minute out there. Just absolutely insane. That right there. That's the pinnacle of GNCC racing right there. And sounds like Jackson Burrell standing by with Caleb Russell.
Yeah, thanks, Mikey. Caleb, you're back GNCC racing. You're back up on the podium. Take us through today and get into second place.
Man, I'm so happy to be up on the box and perform like that. Honestly, I was a little nervous coming into today. My winter has been absolutely terrible. Injury, little setback after setback, and just things stacking up. But the one thing I never stopped doing was just I kept showing up day in and day out, grinding my ass off on the bicycle in the gym. And yeah, I was like, you know what? Let's suck it up and see what we got. And I was able to ride a mistake-free race for the most part. And I felt really good. I felt damn good. And Johnny was just better than me in this about 3/4 of the track. He just was really good in that sand, and he rode really well. But I just stayed focused, stayed hitting my marks, and I was like, you know, if I feel like I was going to beat him on fitness if I was going to beat him at all, and I almost got there. But he rode great. Hats off to him, and yeah, I'm here to fight for wins, not just cruise around.
All right, Caleb, the fitness seems like it's there. How do you feel going into the next round in Talladega?
I don't know, man. We'll see in 5 days.
See you in 5 days. You heard it, guys. Back to you.
I love that. As a bad dude right there. As a bad dude.
Mikey, I said to you guys off camera, you know, like I've seen Caleb for many years, and it's probably the fittest I've ever seen him. And
yeah.
I think in that interview it shows. I mean, that was 3 hours and how
the man is standing.
Yeah, 3 hours and 3 minutes,
having a cognitive conversation.
He looks pretty fresh.
Yeah.
That's pretty scary.
He did say, I don't know, we'll see in 5 days. But, yeah, just that was kind of the outlook you expected from Caleb. And honestly, some honest words there, too, about, you know, a little nervous coming into today. But, hey, the results show it. Sounds like Jackson standing by with a third-place finisher and the man that's going to hang on to the points lead, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Ben Kelly.
Yep, guys, I'm here with Ben Kelly. Ben, third place on the day. Take us through it.
Yeah, it was a good day. Had a decent jump off the line, but kind of got pinched a little in that third corner, and, you know, it was maybe 6th or 7th or so, and I was just cruising that first lap, trying to pick my way through and learn the track, and yeah, I mean, I slowly made my way closer and closer to the front, was trying to make a charge, but yeah, just had a couple hard crashes out there, and yeah, it was a tough track, you know, it just felt pretty solid in some spots, and then just would lose the flow a bit in others, but yeah, I felt good. Just need a little more speed and couple less crashes out there to get up closer and battle with these guys for the win.
Well, Ben, how do you feel heading into the next round? It looks like possibly still going to be the points leader. Either way, a good points day for you. How do you feel heading into Talladega?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. You know, it's going to be a quick turnaround. After this brutal race, and yeah, do what we can. Do a little riding maybe, and try again in a week.
All right, guys, you heard it. Back up to you.
Get some ice on that pinky, Ben.
Yeah, he'll block that out, no problem.
Absolutely.
In 6 days' time. Interesting to say, you know, Ben Kelly, hey, get a little riding in maybe. You know, he wants to fine-tune some things before we go racing again in 6 days. But, man, what a race. What a display. That one was exciting.
Yeah, that was good. I think we're going to try and line up an interview with our first-place finisher out of the XC2, Grant Davis. So hang with us. Hang tight. Don't turn away. Want to hear from Grant. But, yeah, what a race. I mean, that was one that, you know, you just one for the 8. I think that's one. This is one we'll talk about as far as endurance and what guys are made of that race GNCC. This is one we're going to talk about for a while. Okay. So it sounds like Grant Davis may have – you're good.
May have went back to the pits, so we'll nix that. Understandable, probably getting himself cooled down and rehydrated as well. But, boy, Johnny, great race today, and I believe we're going to take a look at our specialized race recap. No, we're going to look at you and I. It's me and you. And then it was me and you for miles.
That was a trippy
to
effect.
infinity.
That was a trippy effect.
But, yeah, Johnny, no, great race today. And, yes, we will look at the specialized race recap. That man right there, the reverse plate, tough day for Stu Baylor today.
Yeah, I mean, Stu, last I saw, was in 16th place in the overall, not where he wants to be after a DNF just 2 weeks ago. But Caleb Russell on rails right from the very beginning. Grant Davis putting in a charge, being pursued by his teammate there on that Landers Racing KTM, Gus Reardon for the XC2. Johnny Girard leading. He and Caleb kind of split up the leading today. I think Johnny Girard did a bit more than Caleb did, and it was just a battle between these two at the front. We saw them basically glued together for pretty much 3 laps of racing.
Yeah, absolutely, and it made for some great racing, and as it wore on, man, it just became the Johnny Girard and Caleb Russell show, and I don't know that your opinion is going to matter a lot more than mine. Was pit strategy the difference maker today? Well, obviously there were other factors, but was that the big difference maker?
I think that's where Johnny was able to use this pit stop right here to his advantage. He got away from Caleb. Caleb was kind of left by himself and was never, even despite him saying, hey, if I was going to win this race, I knew it had to be on fitness.
Yeah.
It wasn't until very late in the race that he was able to start to close that gap down. So Johnny put in a great sprint, and that pit strategy definitely coming into play there. Jordan Ashburn, solid throughout the early parts, kind of fading back a little bit there as the race wore on. But Johnny Girard just continuing to charge out front. Everybody cheering him on from that FMF KTM team, and he was pushing for all he was worth. When the final lap of racing started, 23 seconds was the difference between your leader, Johnny Girard, and your second place rider, Caleb Russell. Ben Kelly very much in the mix just about a lap earlier, had gotten nearly to the rear wheel of Caleb Russell, and then you heard him say there in his post-race interview, or before we started his post-race interview, 3 very big crashes for him that ultimately left him in that third place spot, not allowing him to continue his charge, as he was really starting to reel in your leader, Johnny Girard, and second place Caleb Russell at one point.
Yeah, and then from there, again, Johnny Girard just did a stellar job of maintaining that gap. It was 30 seconds. It got down to about 14 and kind of stayed in that range until the very end. I think the final gap was right at about the 8-second mark. But Johnny nearly flawless, had one gnarly little get-off where Caleb was able to make up a bit of time. But nonetheless.
That should be coming up right here. This is the final lap. Don't know if we actually are going to show it in the recap, but while Caleb Russell was charging through that section of racetrack, Johnny Girard going down, having to pick that machine up and giving up valuable time.
So yeah, and then lap traffic, obviously a bit of a factor today, but really no problem for Johnny Girard or Caleb Russell. Lappers doing a good job of making room for those guys, and you can just see it right there. The 557 continuing to charge. Johnny, you talked about that 1 minute mark is the mark. You're like, man, that's probably it for today. But if it's in the 30-second range, anything can happen, and I think that's definitely how Caleb closed out today's race.
Absolutely, and this was kind of the closest things got, down to about that 14-second mark.
Here.
And then right here, Johnny Girard had opened things up back to about 20 seconds. This crash, you heard him talk about it. This is where he lost the visor, and he said, hey, man, I just watched the front. You heard him talking to Caleb Russell after the race, giving up time, but ultimately putting his head down, charging to the finish line, and able to get the job done. And there you see how close it was. Johnny Girard, as he was coming to the finish line, Caleb Russell in the finish line chicane as well. 8.2 seconds, the margin of victory, and it bodes well for the racing moving forward the rest of 2025.
So there you go, your top 10, Girard, Russell, Ben Kelly, top 3, Grant Davis, first in the XC2, Angus Reardon, second in the XC2, fifth in the OA, Liam Draper, Snodgrass. Now, I don't know if that is before or after. A penalty will be assessed to Lyndon Snodgrass for taking a pit stop outside of the designated pit area. As Johnny mentioned, we will let the powers that be give the specifics on that, but then Mike Wachowski 8th. These are unofficial, by the way. Cody Barnes 9th, and Ricky Russell on that Triumph machine, rounding out the top 10.
There you go. So Cody Barnes 3rd in that XC2 class, his first podium of 2025, and good day for him. Those XC2 guys,
that's it.
Solidly 3 of them inside the top 10, just a little further back than where we saw them 2 weeks ago.
That's it. So, hey, maybe this is a little more of what we'll be expecting to see throughout the rest of the season, or maybe the XC2 guys fire back. Johnny, big takeaway from today.
Great racing.
Yes.
Unexpectedly great racing. Florida is normally a war of attrition, and we had 3 riders really coming into the final lap with still a shot at the win, and it was exciting to watch. Impressed with Johnny Gerard able to hold on, but Caleb Russell seems to be pretty dangerous right now.
I'm going to give the outside looking in. I've never been a pro rider. I've never raced this level, but I've got friends at home that run ultra marathons. I've got friends that run that run triathlons. You guys are awesome. GNCC pros are the top of the endurance athlete world, and I'm doubling down on that. I'll die on that hill any day. I mean, this was just a display of just physical and mental athletic superiority to me.
Mental is the big thing. This was mentally going to be the toughest race of the year, no question. Overall for everyone, there might be certain riders who have challenges to overcome in other races, but no one's going to test themselves like they did today the rest of the year, that's for sure.
It was a beautiful day. Hey, we got a short week as far as GNCC is concerned. We'll be back next week in Talladega for round number 3. But, hey, if you love racing all the time, stay tuned. Racer TV the next 2 days. We're going to be doing Ricky Carmichael's Amateur Supercross at Daytona Speedway tomorrow, and then on Tuesday we will have Vintage, and we'll have ATVMX, and then we'll have Talladega GNCC round number 3. And then, man, we're already talking Camp Coker. That'll be this month now, albeit at the late end of the month on the 29th for the Pro ATV race. But nonetheless, some great racing in store for you guys watching at home on Racer TV. On behalf of Jackson Burrell, Zach Herron, Johnny Gallagher, our camera operators, Mike, Matt, Josh, Adam, Leah, Kirsten, Jack, and Cameron, our drone operator, Gabe Scholl, manager, Dan Reinhardt, our engineer in charge, Jordan McFadden, our director, Don Hampton, producer, Adam Gordon, and our executive producer, Miss Carrie Jo Russell. I'm Mikey Waynes, and you've been watching GNCC on RacerTV.com.